3 days had passed and a boy looked frightened. It seemed like a very luxurious room, and he still couldn't believe he had entered it. In a novel he had written himself, he thought people usually referred to this phenomenon as transmigration. But he believed that only happened in the world of webtoons and never imagined that. Sitting on a beautiful bed, scared, he thought he never imagined something like this could happen to him. It was a beautiful day in that enormous mansion, and our hero was cautiously taking a few steps. He assessed his appearance, and also noticed a little excess fat on his belly. Then, in looking at himself in the mirror, he said he still couldn't get used to it. There were also these faint letters that wouldn't disappear even after he rubbed his eyes. On the terminal, it said the name of the character was Larson Mayton. His talent was magic, and his trait was improbability. He concluded that he had really transmigrated into his own novel. At least he thought. For the next 9 years, he would be just a supporting character. Eventually, he would end up being eliminated by the hands of his brothers. Larson had been sleeping peacefully, but on the very first day, he suddenly woke up, startled, asking what time it was, scaring a maid who was in the room. Nervously, he'd apologized for that. But the maid said his sins were grave and kneeling to the floor, begged for his forgiveness. The boy sat on the edge of the bed, wondering who she might be. Analyzing the girl's appearance, he guessed she didn't look Korean, but didn't seem Western either. A little confused, he asked, Hey, where am I? She, bowing her head to the ground, apologized and said she didn't know her master would wake up early today and she didn't dare to wake him. She begged for mercy. Our hero was a bit stunned, not understanding what was going on. Surprised, he got up from the bed and asked if the girl was okay, only to be shocked moments later. Desperate, she screamed for him not to hit her. The girl collapsed on the floor, unconscious. While Larson thought all he did was get out of bed and the girl fainted. He figured that's what happened on the first day, and honestly, the first day felt more like a dream. Sometime later on the second day, the boy was sitting on his luxurious bed. He realized his name was Larson, not Cha Sung-min. He recalled meeting a boy that afternoon. The boy who entered his room was named Hampton and said, Young master, here is your diary. Confused, our hero asked what diary, and the boy stammered and apologized, saying he wouldn't take long to finish writing it. As the boy sat at a desk and began to write, Larson approached from behind and watched him. He thought, this diary, he remembered it, that descendants of noble families usually had all their steps monitored. So someone was responsible for keeping a diary updated with all the actions of that descendant until the age of 14, marking the start of their pilgrimage. The boy noticed his master was very close and got startled. Because of the scare, the boy dropped the diary on the floor, spilling ink over it. Hampton was very frightened and apologized, saying he would clean everything up. Out of nowhere, Larson got ready to kick the boy, then paused, confused, realizing his body was acting on its own. He thought that the feeling he had when looking at that boy was that he needed to kick him. Then, smiling, he landed a huge kick on the boy's side. Trying to recover, Hampton got up trembling and afraid, while our hero thought it felt like these actions were programmed into him. And so, as the second day passed, he was slowly overtaken by memories. The memories of the character Larson Mayton. At 4 years old, he remembered hitting commoners with a toy bat, and Hampton was one of those commoners. At 5, Larson discovered the secret of his birth. He remembered the moment he asked if that woman was his mother. The boy was the son of Lord Decatra and the maid Soso. Larson was very afraid of Decatra, but he was horrible to Soso. On one occasion, he treated her badly by simply telling her to disappear. Our hero feels deeply ashamed to know that these memories are his. These things happened when he was 7 years old, and he had a tremendous talent for being a worm. He remembers that he committed many atrocities, so many that he couldn't even list them all. But after that storm of chaos at age 7, an important incident happened when he was 8. With a stick, he called a girl a wretch while hitting her non-stop and smiling, asking if she wanted another beating that day. However, Larson suffered from a terrible illness and ended up beating Rosalind, a 6-year-old girl and the daughter of a master. Because of this, his father, Lord Decatra, had to bow and apologize to Lord Grandel. Sometime later, when he was 9, he was sent into exile in a remote place. Then, just a few days ago, he seemed to be quite aggressive. He was shouting, demanding they'd bring him Verdant chocolates. Could he be addicted to chocolate? On a computer screen, our hero said he was Larson Mayton, a character created by himself. It's also true that he defined his own personality as trash, however. He had never created such detailed and complex memories for a supporting character. These were things Choi Sung, the writer, had never written. The boy looked out the window while our hero concluded that those memories had been spontaneously created by the world. He realizes that almost all of the memories have already reached him, but they are all useless memories. On the third day, Larson thought he had to accept that he had gone through a transmission, and that this is not just a dream, but all of it is real, so he can no longer stay trapped in his thoughts. In the real world, he had written Larson Mayton, a supporting character in a novel called Master Swordsman Sade, written by him. He never got around to describing what Larson looked like or what abilities he had. That's because he was just a supporting character who didn't appear very often. So all he did was describe him as having talent for magic, and just to be safe, he had even written more detailed descriptions, but ended up not using them. A message box from a reader asked who Larson was and since when he was part of the Mayton clan. He thinks that's why Larson's abilities might never have existed for the readers. But our hero knows that in the end, he ended up being executed at age 17, and that thought gives him chills. He concludes that his #1 goal now will be to stay alive. Larson at that moment was 9 years old, so he had 8 years until his execution, thus deducing that he has 8 years to try to change his future. Desperate, he realizes that the problem comes after that, because even if he works hard to change the future over 8 years, he will have to face the main character of the story, the true protagonist of the novel named Kaysen Sade. In that novel, the Maton clan will become Kaysen's enemies in the future, and Dekatra, the patriarch of the Matons, had accidentally killed the firstborn of the Sade clan a long time ago. It's a complicated secret, but revealed throughout the story. The tension reaches a climax, and in the end, the two clans go to war, and this becomes known as the War of Magic and Sword. As the title of the novel suggests, the Sade clan comes out victorious, while the Maton clan is almost wiped out. Our hero thinks, what the hell? These system messages keep popping up. What do I do now? In the real world, Cho Sung is the creator of that world. It could be just any world he wrote for fun in his spare time from work. But that's the truth. He's the creator, and all the strokes of luck the protagonist had were created by him. He thinks that he might even know the future, and as long as he can follow it, it will be like his own life. But suddenly he clenches his fist and says no, that he can make this better than the life he had. He realizes that the bathroom in this suite is bigger than the entire apartment he used to live in. And that life only gives us one shot, and maybe it's not so bad to live a luxurious life as the youngest son of the rich clan. He knows that since his talents for magic haven't bloomed yet, not even Larson knows the extent of his powers. But you must be among the geniuses of magical combat. After all, he has Maton blood, which is one of the 3 greatest clans in this world. He realizes he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and needs to see that as something positive, except for the fact that he is a bastard and will end up getting his head cut off at 17 if he does nothing, but he could still live a better life than Cha Sung had in Korea. And that life is what he makes of it. Besides, 8 years is plenty of time. Suddenly, something catches our hero's attention. It seems like a text terminal opens above him, and the same message he saw when he transmigrated appears, saying that Larson's will has been activated and the Divine Eye has been activated. Our hero is somewhat surprised by this, realizing that this is a skill the protagonist of Master Swordsman Sade had. He stands there for a while, staring at the words Divine Eye, and questions why this ability awakened. Looking at that information terminal, he thinks that this is a skill belonging to Kaysen, the main character. He deduces that the words he was seeing were actually the effect of this ability. He questions why he would have this ability, since he's not the protagonist. But in the end, it doesn't matter, and he knows that from the moment he transmigrated, common sense was thrown out the window. He thinks about the protagonist's ability, recalling a scene in which he faced a horde of creatures. Sade, the clan of renowned swordsmen, is from a Munchkin fantasy novel. The protagonist is so overpowered that he can destroy an entire continent. Actually, not just a continent. He wouldn't be a Munchkin protagonist if he couldn't destroy the entire universe. But this power will be used to destroy the Maton clan. Caught off guard, our hero wonders if it's a ring. That energy ring appears in the air, and he thinks in disbelief that he can't possibly be seeing this. It's as if the Divine Eye is scanning his body, so he wonders if that ring could be the first circle. To explain, a circle is a mana ring formed around the heart, and it's a vital part of using magic, acting like a battery. In the terms of that world, even the first circle requires a lot of training and study, an academic field that demands a lot of money and patience. And he concludes that this bastard would never have the patience to study that kind of material, on top of not having any memory of training. He deduces that this must have happened automatically. He thinks it must be Hera's time now, when suddenly a woman asks the young master if she may come in for a moment. The woman enters and places her hand on the ground. Our hero is a little surprised by this. She kneels down in fear and waits there in silence. He remembers when he stepped on the woman's head and says that when she makes eye contact with him, she better kneel, asking if she understands. Annoying, our hero thinks this bastard made so many stupid rules while the woman watches him. He's startled by something, and then immediately feels a bit of fear. He wonders what it means, as on the terminal he's seeing, her name appears, and her main attribute shows up as assassination. So he asks himself why the main attribute of a little girl would be assassination. He doesn't even remember writing anything like that, but he thinks he forgot that the worldview of his novel is one where power and violence run rampant, very much like a jungle. So this means someone deliberately placed an assassin at his side, and he concludes that someone is fighting for succession. He realizes this is an insane world, and that it doesn't matter if he was born with a silver spoon, he could still die just like that. Very tense, he tells himself to calm down and at least fake a smile. Because this girl in front of him is an assassin, he knows that if he gives her a chance, she might end up killing him. Relying on his memories, he wonders if she had just been pretending while crying and acting scared. That seems the most likely. He realizes that her trembling is just an act. That's what the Divine Eye is telling him, and thinks she could probably work in dramas with acting like that. Clearing his throat, he calls the girl by name. Looking frightened, she replies, "Yes, young master." Then he says he wants verdant chocolates. The girl, surprised, stammers while asking about the chocolates as he internally pleads for her to just leave so he can organize his thoughts. With a shout, he asks if she's questioning him, but she runs off saying she would never, and that she'll get them immediately. Finally, she leaves and closes the door behind her. Outside, Hera leans against the wall, thoughtful. She wonders what that was and finds herself unable to describe it in words. But she concludes that something is different from before, as if a few days ago the atmosphere around him had completely changed. But she can't quite say how. She thinks of our hero smiling at her and knows that something has definitely changed. Rushing through the corridors of the mansion, she thinks that even though it may be premature, maybe she should report this to them. So she hurries along while the cute kitten sleeps. Sitting at his desk, Larson opens his terminal and thinks he'll take a look at this now. He sees that Larson Mayen, who is now him, was exiled to the Bordeaux Annex and completely removed from his father's sight and the line of succession. He has no chance of becoming a successor candidate in the Magic Clan, but in his case that's a blessing, since they are the antagonists. He decides that for now, to survive, he will act like a normal human being. Fortunately, Chersung is the creator of this world, and he even possesses the powers of the main character. He knows the future and even where to find ancient artifacts. He thinks that he needs to participate in the battle of succession, because if he doesn't, he'll be known as the trash of the Mayen family. Right now, he's only 9 years old, but he'll be 10 when he joins the battle. This stupid idiot will continue his disgraceful acts after age 10 and leave this world at 17. He realizes that here he can eat anything he wants without worrying about money. He can also travel anywhere he wants, and he can live a free and luxurious life, unlike the one he had before. He just needs to secure his place in the house and he'll be fine. He remembers that he's done this several times before because that's the military code of Korea. He comes to the decision that he knows how he should act in this world and also what things he must do. A terminal informs him that due to a lack of mana, the effects of the divine eye will be deactivated. Just as a girl stammers an apology to the young master. Nervously, she says she wasn't able to bring the verdant chocolates due to the difficulty of obtaining them. But our hero says it's okay and thinks that he actually doesn't even like chocolates. He just needed a little time. Not understanding his reaction, Hera apologizes again and the boy says it's fine and tells her to disappear. He decides that for now, he'll continue playing the role of the Dan Larson, but with some moderation. But he realizes the most terrifying thing of all. The girl's footsteps made no sound. Hera keeps insisting, so the verdant chocolates, and the boy, shouting, says that he already said it's fine and cursing loudly, tells her to get lost. She finally slams the door, saying she understands and wishing him a good morning. Outside, she stands deep in thought, wondering if she misheard what that bastard said, but she concludes that she definitely didn't. She remembers him saying just seconds ago, it's fine. She questions how this guy whom used to go crazy over chocolates said it was fine, and decides to observe more before reporting anything. Then a week later, someone calls out for Hampton in that massive mansion. The boy replies, yes, young master, and is ordered to get ready. Stammering, he asks if he's serious, and get ready for what? Larson then says they're going to the training annex. Still stammering, Hampton asks if it's the training annex. Then our hero yells, asking if he's going to have to repeat himself, and the frightened boy runs off saying he'll schedule a time for the 7th young master. Our hero had been thinking about a lot of things during the week and managed to organize them in his head. First, to survive, he needs to join the battle of succession as a decent human being. Second, for that, he'll need to train a lot. And finally, he must survive at all costs and also become independent. To do that, there's something essential he'll need to confirm. The first circle, magic combat, and the magic eye, all of which awakened in him. So with determination, he thinks the day to test them has finally come. That boy keeps running and thinking that something happened to young Master Larson, that he's changed, and the fact that he ended up getting hurt because the master hit him isn't something he should be angry about, but rather apologize for, because that happened due to his own failure to serve him properly. And now the 7th young master wants to go to the training annex. While he was asking if it was really the training annex, the terminal shows that this boy is a poison user, which sucks. Our hero wonders when he even started learning about poisons and that the boy must have been waiting for a chance to go after him. Each successor candidate in the Magic Clan receives a well-trained helper. These helpers are trained and brainwashed from childhood, dedicating their lives. And the shadow of the 7th son is Hampton, but Larson questions having a shadow, wondering if even trash like him has a shadow. But in the end, that boy is just a well-trained servant of the Maiden clan. Hampton feels grateful that his master came there to train, but he's curious and worried about the reason behind this sudden change. He thinks it's not that he's afraid the master will cause trouble or anything like that, but he feels sad when his master's actions cause him to be looked down upon. Determined, he says no and that he needs to believe in the young master. Getting closer to the place, our hero is surprised and realizes it's a modern-looking building in the middle of a fantasy world, so he concludes he was lazy even in describing this world. As he heads to the door, he thinks that at least it's something convenient and something he's used to. Also, that there's at least one administrator managing each annex. A man in a cloak gets quite excited that the young master has arrived. He introduces himself, saying his name is Noah, and he is the administrator of this annex. Our hero says he understands and that it's a pleasure to meet him, and the man replies that yes, it's an honor for him. But clearly irritated, the man thinks he's the same person the master hit last year for not bowing properly, and he doesn't even remember him. Inside, the building looks quite spacious. Surprised, Larson realizes he couldn't read him with the divine eye and wonders if he's more powerful, as expected of an administrator. He thinks it's best to treat him well, so he tells the man that he's going to start training today and asks what monsters are good for him to fight. That man is surprised and asks train, and Larson replies yes, and that he wants recommendations for things suitable for his age. So the administrator asks the boy's age, thinking he knows it since it's been a year since the humiliation. Larson replies that he's 9. Very irritated, Noah wonders how he could sabotage him, and that he wants to do it in a way no one can blame him afterward. But suddenly, he gets an idea, and says that the 6th young master started with a mushroom monster at age 9, and our hero becomes curious. He thinks he remembers the description of it, and on the terminal, he sees some details about the monster. He then confirms that it should do, and the man says he understands and will prepare it right away. Quite excited, the manager says he'll get the mushroom forest field ready, and that it will take about 3 minutes. Our hero tells him to do whatever he wants. Larson wonders why he's so excited. He thinks that the mushroom monster isn't that difficult, and he's not surprised the other master defeated it. Now he just needs to focus for 3 minutes. Then he starts feeling the rain around his heart, his talent being magical combat. He knows he's in a state where he awakened his own magical knowledge on his own, thanks to inheriting magical blood. The excited manager appears again, asking him to please come with him. On his terminal, it shows that his current location is the mushroom forest and that it has been magically manifested. Through the magical door, the man wishes his lord good luck. Suddenly, our hero is surprised by something, and seeing a creature watching him from a corner, he wonders if that's the monster. Out of nowhere, the creature lets out a roar, and his assistant says the mushroom monster's weakness is its body, and since it's a fire-type monster, it's very weak to fire. Meanwhile, our hero asks if that's the mushroom monster. He finds it really disgusting to see monsters moving. Preparing for the fight, he thinks it's time to test things out. He starts focusing magical energy into his fist, when suddenly, a terminal opens in front of him, and on it, the information reads that the will of the body has been verified and magical combat stored in the body has awakened. His magic circle also manifests, and our hero begins to feel his power. In another place, someone is watching him through a crystal wall. He thinks he used to be a famous mage in the Dorothy region before joining the Maidens, and that despite his appearance, they even called him a genius. And even so, he remembers when Larson hit him in the face, asking how he can call himself human after bowing only 82 degrees. Furious, he says Larson humiliated him for not bowing 90 degrees, specifically pointing out that he bowed only 82. Satisfied with the situation, he says that today will be the day of his revenge as he evolved the mushroom monsters to the highest levels. In the training area, it looks like the mushroom is moving very fast. Noah thinks that the combat magic he possesses is considered low level within the magic clan. Therefore, with that elemental magic, he'll never be able to damage the mushroom monsters. But our hero confidently charges at his opponent. The manager keeps watching, thinking, my revenge is complete, you worm. But something seems to surprise him. Inside the training area, Larson charges toward the mushroom monster, determined and full of power in his fist. He delivers a powerful blow to the creature, defeating it. Noah is very surprised by this and thinks with a single strike. Gracefully landing on the ground, our hero says that it was nothing. Then he opens his terminal to check something, and is quite surprised by what he sees, that his current rank is beginner, and that he used an awakened combat magic, which was fully registered and had a small flaw corrected. He thinks he can feel his blood boiling in his heart as he focuses on the information. This time it's written that the beginner-level combat magic called Way Application was marked in his mana circle. Right after, our hero feels that energy flowing through his body, wondering what power this is. Noah, not understanding anything, asks what the hell is this, and that this is pure magical combat, and magical combat is magic accompanied by destructive physical power. He adds that mushroom monsters are resistant to that kind of destructive physical power, and yet he defeated them easily. How is that possible? Then the man says he thinks mushroom monsters can't be used as training dummies, and the boy agrees. Noah wonders what happened to him during the year he didn't see him. He says he's thinking of increasing the difficulty a little, and our hero asks, difficulty? Then he asks how much, since it'll be complicated if it's too much. He's almost out of mana, but the man says it'll be a red mushroom monster. He explains that they're similar to normal ones, but much stronger and faster, and if you don't kill them fast enough, they multiply. The manager says he shouldn't let his emotions interfere, but he needs to gather more information for the report. He says that if he thinks the situation becomes too dangerous, he'll end the training, while our hero says, a red mushroom monster. I didn't create that. But then he imagines that it might be another monster derived from the setting. The manager tells the young master that the monster is being generated, that an angry-looking mushroom appears in the training area. He wonders what the difference is between this one and the last aside from the color, but suddenly something startles him. The mushroom rushes past him, spinning so fast that he barely has time to dodge, crashing into the ground a bit behind him, releasing a massive explosion. Larson is surprised by this, but the monster doesn't give him much time to think and charges at him again. This time, he has to act quickly to defend himself from the attack. The creature passes by him again, so our hero stands still, waiting for the next strike. He thinks it's strong and fast, but doesn't look threatening at all. Suddenly, the mushroom seems to disappear from where it was. But in reality, it moves so fast that it reached our hero in an instant, Reacting skillfully, Larson uses his magic to defend against the attack. And in shock, Noah realizes that he reflected the attack. Back in the training area, our hero thinks there's something he noticed, that the monster's attack pattern is actually quite simple. He decides to use the skills he developed first. On the terminal, it shows, using beginner magical combat called weight application, but it adds that he doesn't have enough mana. Our hero curses upon realizing he's out of mana, but something strange happens, even though he managed to hit it. Larson wonders what that was because it felt like time slowed down for a moment, and he was finally able to defeat it thanks to that. The terminal shows that it's the first time he's used all the mana in his body. Due to mana depletion, the Divine Eye will be deactivated. He thinks that he'll have to look into this once his mana recovers. In an office, someone nearly spills their coffee. Hampton is startled by what he just saw. He asks himself what that was and whether the young master has secretly become stronger. Agitated, he asks the boy if the young master has already had his 10th birthday, but Hampton says it will only be next year. Shocked, he wonders how the hell he's this strong if he hasn't even turned 10 yet. Suddenly, our hero returns to the area. Hampton realizes that the young master even has a mana circle. Larson thinks that the first circle can't be obtained without effort. His assistant notices that his master is definitely training in secret, so he goes to his master and hugs him, while our hero thinks he made a huge mistake. Holding his companion, he realizes he still hasn't figured out much about this world, and standing out too much will be very problematic. For now, he needs to put on a bit of an act, so he falls to the ground right after. The two boys are surprised as the boy collapses. Noah yells for him to call the healing mage from the second floor, and he agrees. He thinks this is bad enough to need a healing mage. Don't they have some healing potions? Upstairs, the mage is taking a light nap, even drooling a little. Hampton bursts in yelling, asking if he's the healing mage, startling the man, who confirms and asks what happened. The assistant says the 7th master is injured, so the mage tells him to hurry. This is serious. Then the mage asks if it's the 7th young master and not the 6th, and the assistant confirms he's the 7th young master. The mage, confused, asks if he's not the 6th young master's assistant, and Hampton says he's the 7th assistant. He asks, still confused, if the 7th young master is really down there, and what that useless kid would even be doing there. The boy explains that he defeated a mushroom monster and took a fatal blow from a red mushroom monster. The mage seems surprised by this. Hampton adds that it was during magical combat. Sometime later, our hero is lying in bed, and the healer says that if the body is broken, it'll be hard to fix. The mage thinks he'll do his best, but changes his mind and says he'll just pretend and send him to a higher level mage, and that there are better mages in the main building, so he can pass on the responsibility to them. Then he casts the spell in the arms of Mana. The magic begins to touch Larson, while the man thinks that, as expected, there's no response. A little tense, he thinks that's it wouldn't have worked anyway. He decides he'll just wrap this up and send him to the main building, quickly, but then something happens and startles him. Larson opens his eyes. Everyone there is quite shocked when the mage says, "Young master." Surprised, the mage wonders if his magical abilities have improved, and that he knows he didn't fix him. So it's easier to conclude that this was due to that bastard's self-recovery. With some difficulty, the young master says, "Thanks." The people around seem to not quite understand what he said. Then he corrects himself, saying, "I said thank you." And that part, the gratitude, is what shocks them the most. Back at the Maton clan mansion, breathing heavily, someone holds some chocolates. Then Hera says she got the chocolates and apologizes because there were only 2, even though she asked for 3, and that she'll really try to get more. Leaving the maid surprised, the boy says it's fine. She can leave him there. The girl tells him to rest because he doesn't look well and says she doesn't want to bother him, but he says it's because he was training and tells her to leave. Stammering, the girl says she understands and asks him to please rest. Someone is surprised and asks if he really went to train, and Hampton says that's what he's talking about, he really did go train. The girl says that can't be. In his room, our hero eats the chocolate. He thinks he doesn't like chocolate all that much, but this one is different. It melts as soon as it touches his mouth, the sweetness turning into warmth, and he feels as if his body is wrapped in a cozy blanket. He realizes something, and if it's not just a sensation, he activates his divine eye. He sees with it that the chocolate's effects are spread throughout his body, and that a small amount of mana was absorbed. He wonders if that's how Larson gathered so much mana. And on the terminal, it says he discovered a fragment of incomplete probability. It's as if his character is more developed and the different probabilities are slowly connecting. He's surprised to think that eating chocolate would give him mana. He knows that to absorb mana, mages have to travel to places with abundant mana, and absorbing even a little of it is hellish. It seems Larson has a special vitality that he didn't include in his original description. Maybe that's why the notification showed that last piece of information. He thinks it's free mana, and the only side effect is that you get fat. He remembers earlier and thinks, "Oh right, that sensation from before, I'll try to picture that situation again." On the terminal, it showed that the attribute Slowed Flow had been activated, so he wondered what that attribute was. The master says he doesn't want anything today, while someone knocks on the door and says he has a visitor, and our hero tells her to buzz off. Entering, a man tells him to watch his tone when speaking to his older brother. Carlton Maiden asks if he's not going to get up to greet his brother, doesn't he have manners or does he want to eat bird poop again? That boy is the one Larson is afraid of, and he really does look terrified. Bowing, he asks if his brother has come, and the guy says that's why he's pathetic. He's slow and stupid. Then Carlton asks what he's waiting for, but our hero doesn't seem to understand what he wants. Getting ready to hit him, the brother says he should crawl like an insect and asks if he's not going to kneel. On the terminal, it shows that accelerated flow was automatically activated, and he realizes it's the same feeling he had when facing the red mushroom. He thinks that what he wants is, and finishes, that he doesn't want to get beaten up by a background character like Young Master 6. And to measure his strength, this is a good opportunity to test how good his skills really are. Dodging the attack with the back of his hand, he thinks first. And in the next instant, his brother is completely disarmed. Very irritated and surprised, the brother asks what the hell he just did. He yells, asking what that piece of trash just did, but our hero says he simply used his right to defend himself. Then his brother challenges him to say that again, but Larson asks, say what? And the boy says, that trash you just said. The boy says, that crap. Carlton, confused, asks what? And Larson finishes, you told me to say that crap. That older brother is furious to the point of trembling. Screaming with rage, he curses at Larson. And preparing to use magic, he says he's going to kill him. Then our hero notices he also has a ring around his heart. He realizes some kind of power is about to be released from that ring. As he attacks, he yells for Larson to die, and the terminal shows that his main attribute is water, and his trait is being a hot-headed child. He sees that the water ring seems to have formed on both sides of his face and another on his chest. And that things will get complicated if he completes the formation, so with a swift move, he resolves the problem, appearing behind his brother before he even has time to react, finally attacking him forcefully from behind using his power. Moving to the front of the boy, he continues hitting him hard. The older brother feels the impact and spits up. He starts coughing, kneeling on the ground, clearly injured. Larson is scared and thinks he thought he was holding back his strength, so he yells for Hampton to call a healer. Analyzing the situation, he thinks maybe before the magic fully formed, the interrupted mana may have exploded inside his body. The assistant rushes in, frantic, asking what happened, and Larson says he already told him, go call a healer, fast. Frightened, the boy stammers and says he understands. Larson wonders if he went too far hitting his brother, but beyond that, he believes he found a more efficient way to fight a mage. His goal is to survive, and he thinks he can already see the path. The next day, the maid asks what that bastard did to young Master 6. She says it doesn't make sense, there's no way that could have happened. Hampton says he saw it with his own eyes, otherwise he wouldn't report it. The young man asks his sister if he can speak the truth, and the girl replies, what are you going to tell me you're the shadow? She says that except for that bastard, everyone already noticed. He says he also thinks she's not a maid, since her movements are really light. Harris says yes, and that's another thing everyone knows except that bastard. Hampton asks, sister, do you still think he's just a dangerous bastard? While the girl sips her coffee, she tells him to keep talking. He explains that's what he thinks, that now that he's close to turning 10, young Master 7 is finally starting to take action. Looking at that enormous place, Larson thinks that this must be the place where he can learn mana cultivation, the Starlight Library. He wonders if it's not as big as a shopping mall, and is actually more surprised that he's never visited the place before. He steps forward and enters that massive building, notices the sheer number of books inside, finds it impressive, and sees that it even has a third floor. He starts imagining how many books might be in that place, and someone replies saying there are around 200,000, calling him 7th young master. Larson looks around, wondering where that voice came from. Suddenly, a woman appears in front of him. Surprised, our hero asks who she is. She introduces herself as the librarian of the Starlight Library named Evian. Hera asks if Larson is preparing for his 10th birthday, and Hampton questions whether it's pointless to hide his true nature. She wonders if it makes any sense, and the boy thinks the other one has been hiding simply because he chose to for the past 10 years. In the end, the girl says he's creative for believing that. In disbelief, the boy claims he saw him complete the first circle, and the girl, confused, asks if that could be achieved in just a few days. The dark-haired boy explains that the 7th young master was never a contender for succession because of his behavior, and the girl agrees. Hampton continues, saying that the woman is the only one observing the hero, and asks how comfortable that must be for him, noting that Larson humbled himself and hid his powers. Hera doesn't think it makes sense, since the bastard's talent is limited to magical combat, but the boy insists he's sure about what he's saying. He claims to be the shadow of the other boy and swears that he showed him the future, because they both share the same fate of being discarded after the death of the 7th young master. The dark-haired boy starts outlining a plan with the woman, but she interrupts and says that if Larson decides to visit a library, she'll consider the matter. The girl had heard that all members of the Maiden clan must study at the library to prepare for the succession battle and to devise strategies. Evian, the librarian of the Starlight Library, introduces herself to Larson, but he doesn't remember who she is and has to open his terminal to find out more. Upon investigating, he realizes her name is Larvian, and the boy is shocked. He hadn't expected the woman to be there since she had fought Kaysen Sade, the protagonist. The redhead recalls that the woman is a high-level mage who massacred the tyrannical lord of Revedon and his knights, freezing the entire Revedon castle. Later, the woman would be known as a near disaster in the upcoming Northern Sea War, and the boy believes she must be a wanted person. Since she's working at the Maiden clan's library, that might be why she hasn't been found yet, as the place is famous for being a sacred ground for mages. Originals and transcriptions of all grimoires are kept there, and every librarian is a mage of the highest level, with the right to manage and read each book. Larson wonders why of all the librarians, Larian, the one who frees others with a mere glance, is standing there talking to him. Pulling him from his thoughts, Evian asks the supposed seventh master to wait at a table on the second floor while she prepares some tea, and she asks which kind he prefers. The boy replies that he likes black tea, although he thinks to himself that he doesn't actually like it. The young man reflects that the world is very dangerous, and it's a relief that this is his first time visiting the library. He thinks about it because he can't imagine how he would have acted if the visit had happened before he transmigrated. He figures he would have done something foolish, and the girl would have frozen him with a glance. On the second floor, the woman asks what kind of book Larson is looking for, and he says he'd like one about mana cultivation. To clarify, he says he needs the most basic one available, but the woman finds it odd. Being a Maiden descendant, a book like that should be unnecessary. He thinks he needs to be cautious before moving forward, and the girl finds that word strange, not understanding what he meant. She asks for a moment to search for the book using magic, opens a search terminal, and shortly after, the book comes flying toward the boy. As soon as the book lands on the table, Larson tells Larian she can leave, and the mage responds by wishing the young man an enjoyable read before vanishing into thin air. The boy reads that mana is a term for all types of energy in nature, and that it's necessary to accumulate mana in one's heart and form a circle in order to become a mage. He learns that the 8th theorem of Largo's equation and the 7th mathematical formula of Prado are required for that accumulation to occur. In despair, the red-haired boy realizes that magic is a field of study he knows absolutely nothing about. While thinking about his lack of knowledge, he activates a power in his eyes called the Divine Eye, which opens a terminal that begins analyzing the magic book. His power evaluates it even if he doesn't understand it, resembling a computer screen. But there's a problem. There's a monster in this world who uses that power better than the boy does. Larson checks the terminal again, which now shows the book analysis is 22% complete and was interrupted because the mana ran out. The boy wonders if he will understand the contents once the evaluation reaches 100%, but he knows he must solve the problem with his mana. Finally, the redhead closes the book and ends his reading for the day. Back at the mansion, Hampton informs the protagonist that Lady Soso came to visit from the Bordeaux Annex. The child wonders in confusion about the visit and is later surprised. Out on the mansion balcony, the woman stands waiting until she notices the boy's arrival, and he wonders why his mother showed up at that moment. In the real world, Cho-sung missed his mother as he barely saw her. At the hospital, a machine that monitors a person's vital signs beeps loudly. The boy screams in despair, begging his mother not to go. She left too soon due to a terminal illness. The boy falls and gets hurt. A bully mocks him, asking how someone without a mother dares to offend him. Our hero has been through a lot since then, and still, his real-life mother looks far too much like the mother in the story. Lost in his thoughts, the boy says, "Huh," but suddenly, something surprises him. He says blue spots, and the terminal displays that the initial stage with that name has begun. A warm tea is served in a cup. Hera finishes handing the drink to the two, who seem uneasy in each other's presence. Larson appears uncomfortable, not knowing what to say. Cho-sung recalls the character's behavior toward his mother and wonders why he spoke that way. Still unsure how to start the conversation, he timidly says, "Mom." Surprised, Soso looks at her son. As the boy begins to speak, the maid is puzzled by his behavior, wondering if the young man had been acting the whole time. She thinks to herself that it was all part of Larson's plan for the succession battle, and that she no longer needed to speculate about his motives. The saddened redhead asks for forgiveness for his past actions. The woman seems even more surprised by what she hears. Awkwardly, our hero says he doesn't know if his mother would believe him, but he's grown a little, and that his old self wasn't the real him. The woman simply replies, "Is that so?" The boy keeps speaking and reinforces his apology, while the mother only lowers her head and listens to his words. The young woman's voice sounded like she was about to cry. Quickly, the woman stood up and left the room, saying she had things to do, but the child knew that wasn't true since she was no longer a maid. Larson thinks again about the terminal, which shows there's an initial stage of blue spots, and strangely, that's the name Choi-sung gave to his mother's illness. In this disease, 3 blue spots appear on the chest and treatment becomes impossible when the third one shows up, but for now, there's only one. As Soso leaves the room, she leans against the door. She wonders why she can't cry on such a happy day. With tears in her eyes, the woman realized her only son called her mom for the first time. The boy went to the door and asked if the former maid could spend an hour of the day with him. He also said he would prepare a special tea, and they would drink it together every day at that time. The mother replied with a yes. Young Maiden thinks that although Katurian vine tea isn't common, drinking it frequently for a while might help cure the blue spots. As he watches her leave, he says, "No matter how terrible I was as a son, a mother is a mother." Finally, the boy says while looking at the scenery, she didn't give up on Larson. He says to himself, hoping the woman won't fall ill. During the night elsewhere, sitting on the bed, Soso wonders if she's dreaming. The young woman clutches the bedsheet, trying to understand how her son changed just before his 10th birthday. Throwing it out into the air, she says it's like he's a completely different person. She wonders if someone else is listening as she looks at the candle. The mother remarks that she's been drinking with Larson every day, and that's why she believes her son has changed so much, leaving her confused. Crying with happiness, Soso feels a pleasant sensation, although it's strange at the same time. The candle flame flickers as if in response. In the morning at the Maiden Mansion, Hera is summoned by the young master as the boy has something important to tell her. The woman enters in mild panic, wondering if he discovered her identity or if he's testing her. In her thoughts, the maid, surprised, wonders if she'll have to kill someone, and our hero interrupts her train of thought saying, "Verdant chocolates." The redhead asks her to get as many as possible and of the highest quality, and remembers to ask for one more thing. Hera believes the boy will save the most important request for last, but the request is sweets from Runan's bakery. An hour later, Larson stares, mesmerized at something. With a huge pile of delicious chocolates, the boy realizes the power of money and authority is amazing, since just one of those treats is quite expensive, and there must be about 100 here. Looking at the full table, he reflects that a maid made an incredibly expensive purchase in just an hour, and concludes he must make the most of the money and authority he has. As candy wrappers start to appear, the young man thinks that the most expensive chocolate costs 30,000 grang each, and the cheapest, 10,000. Our hero eats a bit of what's there and notices that he regained a small amount of mana. He believes he can also absorb mana from the sweets from Runan's bakery. The boy concludes there's a common ingredient in his request. The master calls his servant Hampton and makes another request for the day: bring me the baker from Runan's bakery. Half an hour later, the man is there. The fellow panics, thinking there might have been something wrong with the food. Sweet and cold, the baker recalls the boy is known for hitting the daughter of a renowned martial clan, and imagines the redhead is cruel enough to kill a nobody like him. Summoning all the courage he has left, the man starts the conversation. The boy asks what's in the sweet he's holding. He adds that he wants to know everything, leaving nothing out. On his knees, the baker begs forgiveness for his mistake, while our hero explains that it's not like that, he just wants the recipe. Trembling, the man begins listing the ingredients one by one. His nervousness makes it harder to remember, but he recalls the last two tablespoons of powder from the ancient herb and corn syrup. Surprised, the young man asks if that's really all, and the baker confirms. Now the boy has discovered the substance in the chocolates, the ancient herb. Hopeful, he thinks he can absorb mana by eating this plant. Sometime later at the training annex, an irritated staff member wonders why people want to know about the 7th young master. When there are only 2 things to say, he defeated the mushroom monster using magical combat, and he also recovered from the side effects of magical combat with mana infusion. A man shows up and asks if the staff member has heard the latest. He says the 7th young master defeated the 6th, causing a stir due to the level of aggression. The administrator, in disbelief, replies, "What?" The man believes the boy is completely insane. Note becomes irritated, wondering when that useless kid accumulated so much strength, even if magical combat develops fast. The mage says the 10th birthday is approaching, maybe he trained hard to show off before that date. He says that means he defeated him without even properly activating his mana, but the manager thinks that doesn't make any sense. And above all, mages aren't that fast. Besides, to complement it, they use movement magic like teleportation. But a 9-year-old shouldn't be able to use that. The mage says he never knew the boy was so skilled, and Noah says even with this growth, there's a limit, that he won't be able to surpass the martial clan's Great One, and it also interferes with the activation of other magical elements. That's a discarded study. The mage says that Brat must know that, so why would he be learning something not even that good? He wonders if it's just immaturity. Noah says it might be, but he believes it's for another reason, so the other man asks if he's not overthinking it. He adds that his 10th birthday will be interesting. Meanwhile, our hero eats his little plant, and the terminal says he consumed a small amount of mana, and he concludes that he can consume mana without calories this time. Because of the verdant chocolates that Bastard had been eating for almost 10 years, there's a lot of condensed mana in his fat, and if mana accumulates in the heart, heat and energy will be produced with a fat-burning effect. He thinks that if his mana increases, he might be able to activate his eye for longer, so if he learns mana cultivation, he can evolve more efficiently. 3 days later at the Maiden Mansion, someone shouts that they did it. On the terminal, it says that the magic was analyzed and that his divine eye absorbed the information about this introduction. Now it says it is creating the Great Sage Alberto's formation and is revealing a hidden page, and our hero wonders what that is. Suddenly, the book starts flipping pages by itself at high speed. Wondering what the Great Sage Alberto is, he sees it's written that it's the basics of magic for mana cultivation, being the Sage's Book 77. He concludes that if he wants to know what it is, he'll have to go back to the library, but honestly, that Evian is scary. Tense, he thinks he doesn't want to get involved with that cold witch, but he has to do it. While our hero remains there focused, he's being watched in a very bizarre way by his maid. who seems very interested in what he's doing. Back in that library, Larson notices it's a bit cold in there, and while carrying the book, he wonders where Evian might be. Out of nowhere, the woman asks if he's finished reading that one, and our hero nearly dies of a heart attack from the scare. Stammering, he says yes, and she says he read it really fast, so Larson justifies himself by saying it's the very basics. Without reacting, she just tosses the book over her shoulder, and suddenly it disappears. Our hero thinks it's an insane magic skill and wonders how she conjured that without reciting anything. Evian asks if he's looking for another book, and he wants to know if they have book 77 from the Great Sage, Basics of Easy Mana Cultivation. The woman says they have the book as the boy asks for it. She says there's a catch. She explains that this book is classified as rank B since it doesn't have interpretable or informative content, but the boy says it's fine. Suddenly, the woman starts sniffing. She approaches him like an animal and starts smelling him. Our hero wonders what the hell is this, getting kind of tense, and realizes he's feeling a different sensation. It's almost like a predator sniffing its prey. Finally, she says young master 7, and he stammers. Yes. She adds that she smells something nice on him. Larson gets confused and asks about the nice smell, but then remembers something and starts digging into his coat. He shows her the chocolate and asks if she's talking about that. He asks if she wants it, but the woman says no, yet still takes the chocolate. But that if he wants to give it to her, then she'll accept it. While our hero wonders if there was anything written about this. He starts thinking there's something strange, like some kind of bug, and wonders what it could be. The boy says that in that case, he's leaving and thinks it's a good moment to say something flattering. He adds that there's a lot of chocolate in the maple annex and tells her to stop by from time to time, that he'll let Hera know to keep some for her. The woman looks surprised by that. Waving goodbye, he thinks she wouldn't actually go and tells her not to come, that those were empty words like a hollow greeting. A notification appears saying he's 42% complete and that his divine eye will be deactivated due to lack of mana. He thinks it's the basics of easy mana cultivation magic made by the great sage Alberto, but it has less information than he expected. One part said he's a great mage for using this magic, and to learn it you have to start with the basics, and he thinks there are too many words that don't make sense. It was a beautiful day outside. Hampton and Hera were watching something. It was our hero running and panting. The aide says he seems really busy, even went to the Badger Annex library, and is also exercising like that. The girl says it's not just any run, so the boy asks what it is. Out of nowhere, Evian appears and explains that it's the process of melting condensed mana stored in fat by using the body. Hera stammers, asking if it's Lady Evian, and thinks that she couldn't even sense her approaching. She remains silent as the maid says she never imagined someone like the librarian would enjoy chocolate. But since the young master sent it, she thinks that when gifting someone, you must consider the rank of that person, and that if chocolate is given to Lady Evian, a librarian, it might be considered an insult. Then Evian says she cannot ignore the young master's sincerity as she takes the chocolate. Now the three of them stand there watching the master exercising. Hera wonders what he was thinking when he had her deliver that and what kind of relationship they might have. At the Mate Mansion 3 days later, a terminal stated that the basics of easy mana cultivation had been completed, leaving our hero surprised. Excited, he thinks he finally did it, that he mastered easy mana cultivation. But something strange seems to happen. Suddenly, he drops to his knees on the floor. With a hand on his chest, he wonders what's happening. His mana is overflowing, and if he doesn't rid this flow properly, his heart will explode. Clearly struggling with the situation, he curses. He thinks he needs to reusing the divine eye, and that this is a world where you can die if you don't analyze a book correctly. He realizes that his mana is still okay, so he needs to focus on what he's doing. Time passes, and our hero concentrates until he receives a message saying that easy mana cultivation has been implanted in his heart. The terminal says that due to mana cultivation, settings that couldn't be seen before are now becoming visible. The terminal displays that settings from the other world are being revealed. He thinks he might now understand why he felt something strange related to probability coming from Evian. And in a character window, he sees information about the woman, that she is cold and pure, but sometimes cruel, and hidden information will be revealed. It then shows that she apparently loves chocolate, and our hero wonders what that could be. But he remembers it was just for an instant when she babysat a friend's son. The boy ended up writing in her description book exactly the same information that appeared there. Then our hero thinks he finally understands and remembers her sniffing him, realizing the origin of Evian's strange behavior. Suddenly, a voice says that concentrating won't help much, catching our hero off guard. He is surprised as flames appear, and he wonders what's happening. He realizes the fire isn't hot, but it seems like someone is there. A red-haired woman appears and says, "Hey, brat." She asks why he's pretending to concentrate and if he has a death wish. In the character window, it shows Persia Maiden, attributes, earth, fire, and water, personality, tyrannical, violent, and cruel. In shock, our hero realizes it's Persia, an absurdly powerful mage with 3 magical attributes, and wonders what she's doing there. Smiling, she asks if she should just cut him up, saying she can't help herself, and in the terminal, it says she hates weak and pathetic people, and her hobby is body manipulation. She insists, telling him to answer why he's pretending to concentrate. Surprised, our hero starts to apologize but immediately covers his mouth. He thinks, damn it, he almost apologized, and she hates weak, pathetic people. If he apologizes, she'll cut off his limbs. He wonders if this is some kind of test from Persia. He explains that he wasn't pretending to concentrate, and the woman asks what that was. Then, Larson thinks this was something he said of his own will, but he's still scared and whatever, screw it, he'll try. Our hero says he highly doubts her perception skills are lacking. She tells him to keep barking, and he says he's sure she knows. He adds that what she said made him wonder if she wanted to see whether he'd apologize even if he was right or not. Suddenly, the girl starts laughing while he wonders if it actually worked. Persia says, surprised, that the rumors about him changing were true after all, and Larson thinks, questioning, rumors? Smiling nervously, he says he's just trying to become a good person, so she asks if he doesn't think it's a bit late for that. And Larson says that when you think it's too late, that's the best time. Out of nowhere, a giant serpent made of fire appears in front of our hero, leaving him terrified. She says they'll test if it's true, while that magical serpent comes out of her hand. As it coils around him, he says he knows very well that he won't be able to become the patriarch, but he knows his potential, but that he can help whoever is going to become the patriarch. And the girl says that's good and tells him to keep talking. He explains that he's saying he can be at least a small variable, and she asks if trash like him has any use. And Larson says that depends on the skill of whoever is using it, like the example of a pen that can change the world. Persia asks him on whose behalf he wants to be a variable, and our hero realizes she's asking who he will support. He says he doesn't know his older brothers and sisters very well, so he also doesn't know who will become the patriarch. Our hero knows the one who will become the matriarch is Yahello, the last archmage. But he also knows Persia is afraid of the second sister. Snapping out of his thoughts, that serpent hisses in front of him. He notices the heat is getting stronger and he feels like he's being burned alive. She says she kept listening to him because he looked cute, but now he's just spouting nonsense, and Larson says he also knows she hates lies and also hates pathetic submission, and he doesn't want to be remembered by her as a pathetic younger brother. He adds that he can submit out of honor, but not out of fear, and suddenly he's released again. He finishes by saying he trusts that she'll forgive him for telling the truth, while coughing on his knees on the ground. With power in her hands, she calls him an idiot. Persia attacks him with force. Our hero feels her blow. Clutching his stomach, he thinks it's like being hit by a bowling ball. Surprised, he sees an apple and wonders in disbelief he was hit by an apple. The terminal shows that a beginner combat spell protected his heart from high-level mana, and the willpower magic was implemented in him. He wonders if he just got a new combat skill, just from being hit by an apple, and the woman tells him to keep it. Persia says she's telling him to eat it, that it's an apple she found on the way there, and Larson wonders if she really wants him to eat it. Looking at the apple, he's surprised and asks himself, wait, is this? On his terminal, it shows that it's Karsha, a mana elixir, something very valuable, as well as rare and expensive. He's sure he only got something rare like this because he's the youngest son of the Maiden clan. Larson thinks that the protagonist Sade is described as so lucky that a Karsha would be nothing to him, and that it'd be better if he didn't compare himself to him. In the mansion, someone thinks that that's the bastard from the Maple Annex. Persia thinks he's a cute boy who created his own first circle at age 9. She says he really did pretend to be a failure all these years, and that he's very cunning. She adds that she needs people like that for the war against their second sister, a coward consumed by fear, but who also knows how to hide. And even so, he has no chance of becoming the patriarch because he has limited potential. Accidentally splitting the table in half while tapping it, she says he's a great pawn who can't become patriarch. Suddenly, someone appears in the room, and the woman says, Sando. She gives the order to keep spreading the rumors that Larson is a bastard, so no one will want to take him in, and so he'll be kept from seeing the other siblings. She asks that it not be too obvious and wonders aloud if he will eat the Karsha. She tells him to keep an eye on him because it would be awful if he choked or something like that happened, and the guy says she must really like him. Smiling, she says it would be annoying if people said she killed him, and it would be even more interesting if he didn't eat it, because that way he'd be an idiot who can't eat something handed to him on a silver platter, and then she'd have the right to cut off a limb. Meanwhile, at the Maiden Mansion, on the terminal, he sees the message saying that excessive consumption can cause death and that the help of a skilled mage is needed in such cases. Our hero wonders how good this could actually be, and wonders why she would give this to him, maybe to save her even now. He concludes no, that the third young lady is not normal, and he's sure it was out of curiosity or just because. And if he evolves from this, she'll want to use him. He doesn't know if she's going to keep him around or throw him away after using him. He thinks that if he doesn't eat it, she'll at least cut off one of his limbs, so he should eat it. But he's going to need help. Help from an ice mage, so he thinks of Evian and considers it might be a good idea to go after her. But if she kills him for that, she would have a good excuse. She could also say he died from overconsumption, that she tried her best but couldn't do anything, and she would still keep the Karsha. Suddenly, someone knocks on his door, and it's Evian herself asking if she can come in. Our hero figures she must have sensed the mana released by the Karsha, and that hiding it won't help. So at last he says she can come in, but he needs to think of a new plan. Larson says he won't try to hide it since she already sensed it. So as she can see that right there is a Karsha, and the woman confirms it. Our hero says he wants to make a trade with her, and Evian asks what kind of trade that would be. He explains that he can't consume it on his own, so he needs her help. Speaking with no reaction, she says that as a librarian, she must remain neutral. She adds that she won't participate in his succession battle in any way. Larson says he's not talking about anything like that. He just wants to reach a higher level as a mage, as someone who inherited the will of magic, and the woman thinks she can imagine what that means. He thinks that mentioning the will of magic is a textbook example of a mage. Evian concludes that someone is maliciously spreading rumors about the 7th young master. Then our hero says he truly has no intention of becoming patriarch, and the woman says she heard that members of that clan devote themselves only to that. But he says that has nothing to do with him, and that he only wants to improve his own aptitude. Even so, she insists she cannot interfere and tells him to please ask for help from a mage from the central tower. But Larson says he can't trust them. He pleads with her to help him, saying he's telling the truth, because he wants to protect his fragile mother. Evian pauses to evaluate the boy. Someone grabs a person by the hair and asks how they dare not pay taxes. The guard says he'll use them as an example, and the boy begs that bastard to let his mother go. Drawing his weapon, the soldier calls him an annoying brat, while the desperate woman screams for him not to do it. Then he strikes the woman squarely as she steps in front to protect her son. The boy stammers, calling out to his mother, and the soldier grumbles that this is a pain and swears. Desperate, the boy cries out for his mother to open her eyes. As the boy screams, the commoners comment that the monster deserves to die, while others ask what their mistake was. Meanwhile, young Evian becomes enraged. Several guards try to protect the king from the mage. Then, at their leader's command, the soldiers charge at the woman, who calmly casts her magic. She thinks about the 9-year-old young master who was monitored his entire life, and the former servant concubine abandoned by the clan. That youngest son of the clan who had to lower himself, while saying he just wanted to protect his mother. But she thinks that's impossible, because the heir candidates are far too strong, and he's just a bastard of common origin. She concludes she's dreaming of something impossible. But what if this impossible dream? Sitting at her desk, deep in thought, Evian keeps reflecting on the situation. She believes that a dream doesn't need to be possible to be a dream, and that she believes the path is the dream itself. But without showing any emotion, she says she won't help. Then adds that it's not because he gave her chocolates or anything like that. Our hero is overjoyed at that answer. Then a spell is cast on the Kartia and she begins to explain. Here's how it will go. In short, she will freeze the mana that leaks during the consumption of the apple, and then slowly melt it so the boy's heart can absorb it. She says that as a side effect, his body might freeze, and a bit scared, the boy asks, "My body is going to freeze." She adds that if he's lucky, he might thaw out in a few months. If not, it might take a few years, and if he's truly unlucky, he could die. Even more terrified, he thinks she shouldn't say things like that so calmly, but the woman says she's a very capable ice mage, and that she will do her best to make sure that doesn't happen. Lying there, he thinks he should give up on consuming that thing, but right after, he concludes no, because usually in situations like this, the chance of success is higher. Since characters with Evian's personality are quite understanding toward others, and she's telling him it's dangerous. But he decides to think of it as a lottery with great chances of winning, and that there's no gain without risk. Decided, he tells her to proceed. Then the woman says she's still a mage, and since he's hiring her, he'll need to compensate her somehow for the sake of appearances. Our hero asks what this compensation would be, and the woman says it's not much, and that it's just to maintain appearances, so she thinks 24 chocolates will be enough. Elsewhere, Percha asks if he ate the Kartia, and her spy says yes, and that he got help from the librarian. While she enjoys herself there, she asks if it was Evian, that ice girl, and her agent says yes, and believes he touched her heart. Percha asks how, but the boy apologizes, saying he couldn't find out the details, since he can't deceive Evian's senses. The girl says she understands, and that for her little brother to have a trump card like moving Evian's heart. She says the Kartia she gave him was of a special quality. Without help from a high-level mage, he'd die eating it, and bets he knows that Evian is Largian. She says from the way he's talking, it sounds like he managed to start consuming the Kartia, and the boy says yes, but there's something strange going on. He says young Master 7's body seems very resistant, and Percha asks if he's serious, and the boy says yes. Even Evian was stunned. The rate at which he's absorbing the frozen mana is unbelievable, and even so, the temperature doesn't change. Percha says he has the strong heart of a maiden. She asks how long it'll take him to consume it all. Normally it would take 3 years, but she bets on 1, then the boy says at this rate, he believes just 3 weeks will be enough, and finally that cynical smile vanishes from her face. At night in the Maiden Mansion, our hero curses, sitting on his bed, apparently suffering. He thinks his body is way too hot. Not really understanding, he's tense and sweating. Larson keeps working out and thinks that even after running for hours, he's not tired. A rooster crows as the day breaks, and our hero is still running. He thinks his body is very vigorous and feels like his heart might explode from the mana overflow. Calling out to Hampton, who just woke up, he asks him to show him the waterfall garden. Then they arrive at a waterfall, and it seems our hero had some plans. Climbing that slope, he thinks this is much better, since he's burning more energy than when running. He shouts for his assistant to bring 10 kilo lead weights. While climbing with the extra weight, the terminal shows that his willpower magic has just evolved and now protects him even more. Noticing that his body suddenly became much lighter, he sees on the terminal that the weight usage magic has now evolved to proficient. Shouting to Hampton again, he asks him to increase it to 20 kilos, and the boy is surprised by the request. Then a week later, he makes a similar request, now for 30 kilos. And another week later, he's already asking to increase it to 50 kilos, while Hampton says he admires him, but this could ruin his body. Excited and sweating from the effort, he says it's fine that he hasn't been sleeping much and feels way more energetic like this. Someone reports that they believe he absorbed all the mana from the Karsha, adding that it's a monstrous body, while Percha asks if that's really true. He says that every day he climbs the garden waterfall with bare hands, and she asks if he isn't using magic, and the boy says it seemed like combat magic. She says that magic has fast growth but a clear limit, and that he just has to play his role as a small variable. The spy says he climbs every day with 50-kilo weights, and surprised, she asks if it isn't 5, and he says he climbs like that in under 30 minutes. Percha laughs and says he must be overflowing with energy and wonders how many more days he'll survive. The agent says at this pace he'll die in 3 months, because he has too much mana in his body, and without a special power to protect him, his body will explode. He adds that he could survive if Lady Percha helps him, but she says she won't. The Karsha was already the help, now she wants to see what happens. However, if it looks like he's going to die, she needs him to at least tell her how he plans to move Evian. Our hero fixes his hair and says he feels like he's changed a lot after absorbing the mana. While evaluating his body, someone serves a green liquid on a plate. His mother asks if he's sure he's not losing weight too quickly, but he says that's just because he started exercising a bit. She says that appearance is important, but his health matters more, so he replies that he's healthier than ever, and she shouldn't worry. The woman tells Hera that she's getting better at making tea every day. Then the maid happily thanks her and says that Lady Soso is getting more beautiful every day. Larson thinks Hera is very friendly with his mother, and anyway, she's sure that's a good thing. He notices that his mother's blue dot has become weaker, and that's a very good sign. Meanwhile, night falls at the Maiden Mansion. Today is December 20th on the local calendar, and soon it will be December 24th, Stellar Eve, the night of the star's birth. The star here refers to the one who gathered all demi-humans and elemental tribes and met the human emperor. He thinks he doesn't care about the emperor, but the important part lies elsewhere. According to his configuration, Rudia is supposed to come through the west gate on December 25th, the natural enemy of mages, the Crimson Assassin. This Rudia will be thrown out at the Maiden clan's gate after facing humiliation. He thinks he didn't explain it very clearly before, but it was because of the third young lady, and now he understands why Rudia lost an arm. That's why she held a grudge and became one of Kaysen's main companions. She's one of the characters with a special human power called Flaming Familiar. Kaysen forms a pact with fire, and they roam together. Larson thinks it would be nice if he could at least get the Chalice of Fire, an artifact that Kaysen receives from Rudia. But suddenly, he's startled by something, and realizes someone stealthy is inside. His terminal shows the shadow of the third lady. He wonders since when, and if it would be better to pretend he didn't see them, and that if he disables the Divine Eye, he won't be able to see them. But the terminal says he's using mana cultivation, and if he deactivates the eye, he could experience mana overflow, and he thinks that's not good. He figures he should pretend to be asleep. This way, he's sure the person will just leave on their own. The surprised spy wonders what's going on, and that he's managing to use mana cultivation while sleeping. He knows that cultivation is a precise technique, and even a small mistake could result in death, and yet the boy fell asleep doing it. And that this defies all logic. How could he even report this? He thinks this damn kid has mastered the cultivation technique from the Stellar Library, which he considered to be high level due to the energy it releases. But the cultivation continues while he sleeps and his mana remains stable, and that he flipped through the book and didn't find any mana cultivation techniques. He successively absorbed the mana from the Karshio with Evian's help and experienced major physical changes. His kick and how his mana is now gathered in his heart. But he sees nothing wrong with the boy's heart. It looks very healthy. In fact, his mana is stabilizing more and more. He hasn't even created a second circle, and no physical enhancement matrix has been transplanted. He realizes the durability of his heart is unusual, and he'll need to submit a formal report tomorrow. In bed, our hero keeps pretending to sleep. A little later, he opens one eye slightly, wondering if they've left. A beautiful Christmas tree appears. At the Maiden Mansion, a huge Christmas tree has been set up. Our hero calls for Hera and Hampton, who respond immediately. Then he asks them to come with him. The master leads them while his assistant questions where they're going. He says they're heading to the outermost western gate, and Hampton reacts in surprise. There are 4 gates referred to as West Gates in the Maiden clan. The outermost western gate is, as the name suggests, the farthest one. As the 2 servants watch curiously, he thinks, today's the day that Rudia, the Crimson Assassin, the natural enemy of mages, the great one-armed mage. Our hero thinks he's going to meet her. Suddenly, a woman appears, panting. In the middle of a magical battle, she shouts, calling them bastards. And casting her magic, she says she'll kill them all our hero thinks, I'm really late. Meanwhile, someone asks about the eastern outer gate. and Hampton asks if they're going to visit young Master 6's residence on the way, mentioning he prepared a lot of paralysis poisons. Then our hero says no. Larson asks if he was angry, and the assistant says yes, but quickly corrects himself, saying he's not angry at all. Meanwhile, the fight continues somewhere, with the mages yelling for her to stop while she curses at them. Very irritated, she says she's going to kill all of them. The terminal shows that this is Rudia. Her main element is fire, and she's extremely simple, cool, and a daddy's girl. Our boy says that this is Rudia, and that he made her seem extremely simple, that he was pretty lazy with it, so Hampton asks what's her deal. He thinks she probably doesn't have poison resistance yet, so he calls for his assistant and orders him to spread the poison. He says that girl is the target and tells him to paralyze her at any cost right now. His assistant agrees and launches a poisonous paralyzing attack at the girl. The poison pouch flies over the girl as she yells in anger that she'll incinerate all of them. And suddenly the little pouch bursts, spraying poison everywhere. The girl, who hadn't noticed the attack, begins to suffer the effects of the paralysis while cursing everyone. Then our hero approaches, saying he needs to handle this quickly. But suddenly a mage puts his hand on our hero's shoulder, stopping him, and stammering asks who he is and how he got in, demanding identification. Larson tells the man to pull himself together and says he came from inside, asking how he can call himself a guard acting like that. He adds that the people at this gate can't even be considered proper clan mages, and that their skills are far too weak. But in truth, it's not that the guards are weak. Rudia is just too strong. The surprised guard asks who, the boy interrupts and says he's taking her with him. Stammering, the man insists he can't allow that and asks again for identification. Hampton clears his throat and gets ready to speak. He says this is the great hair of the Maiden clan, the great one walking toward the light of the world, gracefully treading the path of magic. He corrects himself, saying he's the great navigator who's about to begin his journey, and Larson thinks he just wants to glorify him. But the assistant finishes by saying he is young Master 7, Larson Maiden. The guard, breathless, says he finally understands, and suddenly shouts, asking what the hell is going on. He yells to everyone that this guy can't be the young master. He's way too handsome, and Larson wonders if that's an insult or a compliment. Then he asks the guard his name and whether he really thinks someone would leave the Maiden mansion pretending to be young Master 7. Calming down, the confused guard says he has a point, so Larson continues and says that everyone knows the young master is a bastard and a pig, and asks if even knowing that someone would pretend to be him only if they had a death wish. Hampton thinks he always finds him cool. Larson says that if he can't trust him, he should send it to the central office to confirm, and the guard says he will. But when they confirm he really is Master 7, he'll have to pay for this, for his arrogance and not believing him. Bowing in fear, he apologizes to the young master, and stammering, asks why the young master is trying to take that girl with him. Our hero thinks he didn't expect him to ask so many questions. Then he gulps, not knowing what to say, and blushing, says it's because she's pretty. The guard, still bowing, says he understands. A little later, the girl is tied up and gagged on the ground, and our hero and his companions watch her in silence. A notification pops up on the terminal, saying a variable has occurred, affecting the story and the plot. Surprised, he thinks, a variable, the world analyzed the small change I made. Suddenly, the girl opens her eyes and starts making all kinds of sounds while our hero thinks he's not sure, but he believes she's cursing him. He figures her personality is extremely simple, and he should treat her as simply as possible. So he says he heard her father is sick, and that he's going to help her. This clearly leaves the girl confused. Larson says his mother was also really sick, so he understands why she came there, and judging by her clothes, she's a mage from Hera who uses fire elements. Hampton is surprised at how the young master knows all this, and Larson continues, saying he heard an epidemic had spread through that region. His maid Hera looks a bit surprised. Then our hero says he knows how to cure this epidemic, while the girl continues making sounds. He says he knows she went there without any plan, thinking they had some way to cure the disease. He asks her if she understood his explanation to nod twice, and the girl, now silent, nods as he requested. The boy asks his maid to remove that thing from the girl's mouth. After the tape is removed, he asks if she's calmed down a bit now, and nervously the girl asks if he's really going to help her. He thinks she probably spoke like that with Kaysen too, so he confirms, saying that's what he said, and she wants to know why he's going to help her. Larson asks if that really matters, but the girl says her father told her that people born with silver spoons don't help others without a reason. He asks why she came even though she thought she wouldn't get any help. She says she brought valuable things with her and was going to use them to trade. Our hero thinks, valuable things, I knew it. He figures it must be the chalice of fire, the opportunity Kaysen Sade got in the original story. So he says he'll cure her father, making the girl very happy, but adds that there will be a high cost. Upset, she says she has no money, but he tells her she can pay later, so she asks how much it will cost. But he says he won't know until he tries to cure him, and the girl immediately tells him to go ahead and cure him, and the boy replies asking if she'll pay him. Rudia says she will no matter what, so our hero asks about the valuable things she brought, and she says she'll give them to him too. Larson says alright, that's enough, and calls for his assistant. He orders him to find some 10-year-old herbs and spread them throughout the Heron region. Boiling them with water from the Silver Sea will solve the epidemic. Hampton says it's the first time he's heard of a method like that and asks the young master to explain it. Larson turns to the assistant and tells him not to doubt his light-based abilities. The boy just stands there, surprised, watching. Kneeling, he says he understands and will follow his orders, thinking it's amazing and that he's really cool. Hera says it might be a bit presumptuous of her, but she'd like to ask something, and the boy asks if she's also curious about the method. She confirms, saying yes, and that she just can't make sense of it with her common sense. Then he replies that he's a maiden. Hera then thanks him for the teachings, and thinks that all that confidence makes him seem almost like the patriarch in his youth. Smiling gently, he tells Rudia that he's going to release her now. The girl, surprised, asks, "What?" Suddenly, she begins casting her magic and asks what he just said. Annoyed, she says she never told him her name. How could he know it? And our hero realizes he made a mistake. Larson thinks it's best not to panic and asks if it's strange that he knows her name. And she says it is very much so, and asks if he offers the herbs even though she hasn't done anything, and finds it all very suspicious. The boy asks, "What if I tell you a Maiden clan's secret?" And the girl still keeps that suspicious look. Also thinking it's strange, he asks why everything that benefits her seems suspicious to her. He asks if she realizes she only showed hostility towards someone who could be her benefactor, and she says yes. He questions whether she's already throwing away all the favors he's done for her, and she says she's sorry. Larson says he didn't hear that, and the girl repeats that she's sorry. Getting closer, he says he didn't hear a thing, and the girl yells that she's really sorry, that it was her fault. Thinking that's enough, she says she accepts his apology, but that she needs to stay here, and then asks why if she can't go home. He asks if she doesn't remember what she did, that she infiltrated the Maiden clan and even attacked the guards. He questions that she said she came to save her father, and what did the guards say? She replies that they said it wasn't a place for someone insignificant like her, and that they laughed at her, saying her father's death had nothing to do with the Maidens. Crying, she adds that they told her to just let him die. She says, very sadly, that she loves playing with her father, but they just said to let him die. The boy tells Hera to release her father, and his maid says okay. Wiping her eyes, she asks who he is to treat her so kindly. Then our hero says, "I am Larson Maiden." The girl looks a bit thoughtful about his name, and suddenly seems to remember something. Then, pointing at him, she says he's the worst bastard of them all. Embarrassed, he asks if he's known as the worst bastard of all, and she confirms yes, that he's known as total trash. Then smiling cheerfully, she says he's not, and that actually, he's a kind person. On his terminal, he sees the message that a variable affecting story probability has occurred, and he thinks it happened again. That Kaisen's ally, the purple assassin, the great one-armed mage, Rudia, he wonders if making her his ally is the right choice. The girl smiles shyly and sweetly, and he thinks he'll wait a little longer. Meanwhile, night falls at the mansion. Hampton enters saying he gathered all the 10-year herbs requested, and that he'll head out now. Larson asks how long until he gets there, and the boy replies at least 3 days of travel. He apologizes to the young master because he wants to ask a question, and asks why he's helping Rudia. Then he replies that it's simply a shame for someone to die from a treatable disease, especially when it's her own father, and for him, helping her isn't a big deal. Still crouched down, his assistant thanks him for the good teaching, while our hero asks what teaching. He thinks they are a famous clan, and maybe he means they shouldn't ignore the struggles of the weak, that this is the path a mage clan should follow. Hampton believes he has found the true light and says with determination that he's off to his master now. But our hero thinks the real reason was that he wanted to get the fire chalice, though it's better to phrase it that way. Then 2 days later, the maids are startled when someone asks if the pig picked out a fun toy. Persia says to let her have a look then, and wonders what kind of toy their biggest disgrace has bought, but quickly seems a little disappointed, and asks who he is, since there's never been a handsome man in their family's history. Our hero replies that he's her younger brother, Larson Maiden. Smiling, she says he's very interesting, always making her a bit curious, and seems to be hiding many things. He answers that he's not hiding anything in particular, thinking, well, besides the fact that he created this world. Persia asks why he turned out so cute, and that boys should have a pretty face. She thinks it feels like her heart is freezing, and the terminal shows that the most resolute willpower is protecting his body. Larson thinks her magic combat skill activated automatically just from making eye contact. Persia says he's fun, and asks how he got like this in 3 weeks. Smiling, she says his face passed the test, and that if he keeps growing like this, he'll receive plenty of love from his sister. Pushing her hand away, he says he doesn't need her love, and she asks why. Then he thinks that this is probably another test from her. He says he wants to be her great rival or her helper, but has no intention of being babied. Liking the answer, she says acting like that makes him cuter. Persia adds that his head would make a great piece of art if it were on a spike, leaving our hero terrified. Tense, he tells her not to make such tasteless jokes, and she laughs, asking if he thinks that was a joke. Concluding, she says she wants to take a look at the toy he bought, thinking about Rudia, and wondering why she has so much talent with fire. Our hero thinks Persia is an unmatched fire mage and wonders if she realized Rudia might have fire talent equal to her own. He decides not to let things happen as they did in the original story, so he says that toy is his, and the woman is surprised. He says it was the toy he chose, and that he's not obligated to show his toy, and even if she asks, he has no intention of allowing it. Summoning her magic, she asks if he dares challenge her. The terminal shows that the most resolute willpower is resisting external willpower. Surprised, she asks how he dares to resist her, saying he's just a shorty who has nothing but combat magic. Now the terminal shows that the easy mana cultivation has assisted in activating the Divine Eye. Feeling the pressure, our hero thinks Persia's mana is crushing him. Then suddenly she says she'll give him a chance, and the boy asks what kind of chance. She says, "You've learned magical combat, haven't you?" and tells him she'll use magical combat with just one finger. She adds that she'll leave all magical attributes aside and only use pure magical combat. She says she read about magical combat for 5 minutes. Our hero smiles excitedly, and getting ready says he'll do his best to destroy his sister. She says their youngest sibling is pretty fast, and she likes that, while conjuring a fire spell with her finger. Then she hurls a flaming serpent of fire at him. On his terminal, it shows that the Divine Eye is detecting an illusion, so he strikes at that illusion with his combat power. Satisfied, Persia thinks he's definitely improved since last time and says he can go. If he wins, she'll leave his toy alone, and adds that he'll have to give it his all, making our boy tense. Then she says that if his toy isn't interesting, she'll crush it. In our hero's quarters, the two mages face off. The boy says he'll defeat her with everything he's got while smiling. Excited, she thinks she didn't expect him to entertain her this much, and he's not even the 5th or 6th, just a bastard abandoned by his father. Suddenly, he rushes at the girl, preparing to attack her, but she prepares her counterattack, saying he was too slow. Quickly, our hero tries to defend himself from the attack, feeling its power. The woman stays in place as Larson manages to dodge. Then, landing on the ground, he fires another magical attack at her. Persia realizes that he wouldn't be able to dodge, so he chose to take the hit in order to counterattack. And then he even learned defensive combat magic, which was a good choice. Our hero on his side realizes that the longer this fight goes on, the worse it'll be for him. That the gap in skill is too big for him to dodge and strike back. On the terminal, it says that more resolute willpower is protecting his body. Shocked, he realizes she hit him with just one finger, and still he ended up with a mana concussion. A message says that the easy mana cultivation is managing the mana circle. Charging forward, he thinks this is his only chance, activating his beginner combat technique. Weight application proficiency. Focused, he decides his target will be her right leg. Rushing in, he grabs his sister's leg tightly, making her lose balance. Persia is genuinely surprised by that, and thinking he'll bring her down, our hero actually manages to throw her to the ground. The terminal reports that the weight application technique was used consecutively as he prepares a punch, and he strikes with all his strength toward the girl. Caught up in the combat, it seems our hero actually hit the target, and he thinks all the bones in his fingers were crushed. He says his big sister used defensive magic, and she confirms it. She asks if he'd rushed her from the start, intending to catch her off guard, and Larson says that was his only chance. She adds that he caught her off guard and clung to her in such an insolent and indecent way, and our hero asks, "Isn't that what magical combat is?" She says that's exactly why she hates magical combat, it lacks elegance. And Larson says it may not be elegant, but she lost to him. Persia looks at him seriously, and grabbing his hand with the crushed fingers, she says that's true. She concentrates her magic on the tip of her finger, and envelops him with that white energy, making him float. The next moment, she curls him so hard into the wall that pieces scatter across the room. As our hero spits from the impact, she says he won the bet. She says she'll take her eyes off his toy and that she's growing more and more interested in her younger brother. She thinks that, as Sando said, his body is really quite interesting, even though it was just with one finger. The attack he defended against was quite destructive. She was curious to see how strong he was, so she tested him to the limit, but realized he's still weak. Finally, she says, "See you later, little brother," leaving him there injured as she disappears in a blaze of fire. Back in her quarters, she thinks what was most interesting is that he absorbed her mana, and that he did it on purpose. And while there are mages specialized in absorption, they're different from him, and that's why she went a bit overboard. Since she has a lot of healing mana, she thinks he might be able to gain something from it, and Sando says she must really value Master 7. He adds that he's interesting, and it seems like she gave him a new gift. Smiling, she says he's right, but that he'll break something in his body if he can't control it properly. Back in his room, our hero looks badly injured. It shows that he fulfilled a special requirement, and the combat technique self-regeneration was activated. He thinks this happens when she appears. Looking at his hand, he realizes it's healed, but it cost a large amount of mana. The terminal says that the requirement for bodily reconstruction has been met, and it will now begin. This greatly surprises our hero, and he asks, what? Out of nowhere, he feels something wrong and realizes that bodily regeneration comes with extreme pain. Then, hunched over on the floor, he screams in pain. He thinks he needs to stay conscious while it feels like his body is being crushed and his bones are being ground to dust. Suddenly, something strange starts to drip from his ear, and shortly after, it starts running down his face as well. He begins to scream with his hands contracting. He thinks his bones are being crushed and that his broken bones are regenerating rapidly. His resolute willpower skill permeates the reconstructed body, and the easy mana circulation skill manages several processes. Suddenly, Rudia and Hera open the door, calling for the boy. His maid, seeing him on the floor, thinks it could be poison, but quickly realizes it's not poison because the toxicity is low, wondering if his body's residue formed that mist. A large amount of mana is required for bodily regeneration, and she wonders where all of his mana is being drained. The terminal says that if mana runs out, the regeneration will be interrupted, which will result in side effects. He says, "Damn, I'm out of mana." Out of nowhere, a flaming energy surges within him. Rudia says she doesn't know what's happening, but she's going to help and begins using her fire magic on him. He realizes it's the Crimson Flame, a fire with immense power tied to purification that he himself created. He thinks he's sure she just wanted to do anything she could, but it happened to be useful, so he sincerely thanks her. As they observe the boy, something begins to happen in the midst of it all. That flaming man emerges with our hero, and the terminal says that bodily reconstruction is complete and something in the story has progressed. Hera and Rudia cry out, calling for the young master. A terminal says that the hidden celestial constitution attribute inside the body has been activated, and our hero appears fully recovered and better than ever. Larson is surprised and thinks that celestial constitution was the best constitution attribute he created for the protagonist. He thinks that this attribute combines with another to form the Celestial Emperor, and that's the one the protagonist receives initially. He wonders why he's receiving the protagonist's attributes, then asks Hera to get him some clothes, and she confirms. The next day, someone asks if it's true, and that her father is doing better. Then Hera says she also brought this letter from him, and the girl recognizes her father's handwriting. The content of the letter said that he and the villagers were feeling better, and that thanks to the mysterious medicine, the pandemic was disappearing. With a tear in her eye, she says she feels relieved. Larson thinks it's a wonderful feeling, and Rudia says she will definitely repay this favor. Then the boy asks, "Favor?" And she says yes, that now he's her benefactor. So our hero says he guesses that's true. Excited, she says she will become the creator of his pact, that she will form a fire pact. Thoughtful, he asks about the fire pact and remembers that this is the pact she made with the protagonist in the original story. The terminal explains that this pact is made once in a lifetime, and the fire familiar will have to assist him forever. So he thinks that if he does this here, the original story will drastically change and the Crimson Assassin ally will vanish from this world. He thinks that his life is at risk, so why should he care about that? And that before turning 17, he must get out from under Kaysen Sage's shadow quickly. Clearing his throat, he says, "If that's what you want." And the girl smiles gently. Beginning, she says that she, the flaming familiar Rudia, makes a lifelong oath before the eternal flame. Surprised, he thinks, this is the fire pact. On the terminal, it shows that something is changing and that those who form a fire pact receive authority over Berserker Rage, leaving him surprised. He remembers that when he was writing the novel, Rudia eventually entered Berserker mode, but for her it wasn't a problem since it was quite simple. The terminal explains that he will have control of the mana of the pact former while in Berserker mode, and the side effect will be her death. In shock, he asks her to wait, saying he doesn't want to form the pact, and she asks why not. After all, it's a good thing. Nervously, he says no, it's not, but she says her dad told her it was good, and he asks her to explain why it's good. She stammers while using her magic, saying, "This," and suddenly, leaving everyone awkward, she asks, "What was it again?" Then our hero says that if she does this, she'll have to sacrifice her life because of him, and the girl says that sacrifice is a good thing. Larson asks why that would be, and she says it's cool very excitedly. Our hero says that if she goes into Berserker mode, he wouldn't be able to stop her, and the girl, confused, asks why that matters. Then he tells her she'll die, but Rudia says that for them, flame familiars, it's an honor to die for the person with whom they form a pact. She says she calls it martyr's strength. He thinks it's worse because she's so innocent and says he doesn't want her to die or be responsible for it. Rudia tells him to relax, that he worries too much that she's not going to die, and he feels that the more he talks to her, the more it feels like falling into a pit. Gripping her hand firmly, he tells her to listen to him. Then he says that she's 9 years old, which means she's too young to form a contract with someone. But she replies that age doesn't matter for the fire pact, and our hero says he's not a flame familiar, so she shouldn't force her beliefs on him. She says that forcing is a bad thing, so our hero says yes, it is, and that he doesn't want to be forced. And Rudia asks if he doesn't want to make the contract. Larson says it's not that he doesn't want to, but the responsibility is way too big, and since they're so young, he's not sure they should complete this sacred pact. The girl then says she understands and that she'll wait. Then the terminal says the pact was cancelled. The girl says she sees that he's a good person, and our hero asks why she's saying that all of a sudden, but she adds that it was her father who said so. She explains that the pact needs to be made in a sacred way, and the contractor must be chosen carefully, so Larson asks, is that so? She says her father told her that if she made the pact, she'd be perfect to be used as a tool, and that if he rejected her, it meant he was a good person. She adds that her dad said people like that are trustworthy, and that she should never let someone like that slip away. With sparkling eyes, she says it's so wonderful. It feels so good. She says he's so nice. He healed her dad and even gave her tasty snacks. So he says she should give him the valuable thing. Surprised, she thinks, oh right, the valuable thing. Excited, he thinks it must surely be the chalice of fire, the relic closest to the flame familiars. He figures it must be hidden in the draconic mountain range near Heron, inside a small tomb that only a flame familiar can activate. She says there's something really good nearby, and our hero questions that, then she says it's something super mega good that her dad mentioned. So he asks what the name of this thing is, silently hoping she'll say it's the chalice of fire. But the girl says she doesn't know the name, leaving our hero in silence. He asks if she really doesn't know, and she says they just told her it was a really good cup, and Larson thinks he might have made her too dumb. For now, he decides to try learning more about the chalice of fire using the divine eye. He sees on the terminal that she can, once every 100 years, create flaming water, and that it has purifying powers for both the mind and the body. He concludes that with this, he won't be able to be controlled by magic, poison, or even get a stomachache. This item guarantees a long, healthy life. He calls the girl and tells her they're going, while wondering what that line at the bottom of the window meant. It read, or that's how it's recorded. Hera asks the young master if she should request help from the protectors, and he asks if she means the Order of the Tiger. Surprised, he thinks, oh yes. The main Maiden family always had a group of mage bodyguards for when they left the house, and not even the youngest son would be an exception. He wonders what he should say as his goal for going to Rudia's hometown. What would the family say if they found out he went there to get a good cup? Nervously, he thinks he can't start by lying, and that a 7th circle mage will be at his side the whole time. There's no way to lie. But the problem is that each protector must be guarding one of the siblings. And this succession battle is using as much of the family's forces as possible, so there's no way they're guarding someone else. But he also doesn't want to give up on the fire chalice. He wonders if he's really risking his life to get the chalice. Should he let it go? He keeps tapping his foot on the ground nervously. Protector Mage Japel is summoned, and he then asks, what? This mage has a terrible relationship with Larson and asks if the worst bastard chose him to act as his protector. 3 years earlier, Larson had told the mage he was just a guard dog and that he was the master here, asking if he understood, and said that if he understood, he should lower his eyes, insulting him. Our hero thinks, even at 6 years old, what was I doing? And notes that protectors are great mages who've reached the 7th circle. Hera asks what she should write as the reason, and a worried Larson asks, reason? He tells her to just write that he went out to play because apparently there are some really tasty chocolates over there, but she thinks that won't do. Then somewhere else, someone stamps a document saying he's been approved. The powerful bodyguard mage arrives at the mansion. This was the Maiden clan's protector, Mage Japel. From up on the balcony, our hero greets the mage and gives him a gentle smile. The mage, been uneasy, asks how he's been. Japel notices and comments that he's changed a bit since the last time they met, and the boy confirms that he's changed a little. Then he says he'd like to ask something, and Larson asks if he's curious why he chose him as protector, while the mage confirms it. As he continues and says he's just a guard dog, our hero thinks. So if he remembers, his memory really is good. Our hero says that he needs to protect his master, since he is his little guard dog. This catches the mage off guard. Larson thinks he's a 7th circle mage and is honestly scary, but says he's the most loyal dog and feels like he wouldn't betray him. The mage asks if he trusts him, but our hero says he doesn't, leaving the man even more confused. Larson says he doesn't trust the man Japel, but in any case he trusts the protector Japel, and says he knows he's greedy, asking if he's right. He knows Japel is ambitious and greedy and more reliable than anyone else, since he allies with anyone who shares the same interests. He thinks that Japel was loyal to young Master 4, Seren, but eventually changed his allegiance to young Mistress 2, Yahello. Japel asks how his greedy personality made the young master choose him, and Larson says he feels like he could be of help one day. That man thinks he's just a mediocre, powerless bastard. Then he asks, even if he's loyal to the 4th master, wouldn't he rather serve the 2nd sister instead? Leaving him confused by the question. Then the mage replies that he's just a protector, loyal to no one, and Larson says he seemed kind of eager to answer that. It adds that protector needs a good reason to protect a master. Then the man says that he is, in fact, right. Our hero says, I command you as a member of the Maiden clan, protect me. Confirming that he will, the Guardian wonders if he's the same idiot as before, and what could happen to him. He thinks he vaguely heard rumors that he defeated the 6th young master, and that he created his own magic circle without any magical tutor. And what's most surprising is that it's just the 1st circle, but he feels the man of the 2nd circle mage and even the 2nd young mistress couldn't do that. He decides he'll keep an eye on him since he must be hiding something. Sometime later, the three travel together with Rudia singing that she's going to see her daddy. Arriving in the city, our hero thinks, so that place is Heron, Rudia's hometown. The ancient Flame family once had the power to dominate the entire continent, but their decline began when their phoenix god exhausted its divine power. He thinks that no matter how he looks at that place, it seems like a remote village in the countryside. Arriving at the entrance of the town, Rudia looks like she's filling her lungs with air, and lets out a loud shout, calling for her daddy. Larson covers his ears at that. Someone comes running, calling for the young master. Hampton apologizes for not coming to receive him. He didn't know he was coming, and the girl asks where her dad is. Then the boy says he's at home, and she runs off excitedly, while Hampton runs after her, asking her to wait for him. That mage analyzes the situation and thinks something feels off. He remembers the boy asking if he wouldn't rather serve the second sister instead of the fourth, as if sensing he might be useful one day. Feeling a bit tense, he thinks he never actually voiced what he was thinking. The girl's father appears, calling for her, and Rudia embraces him emotionally. The two bow and thank our hero, who feels a bit embarrassed. Japel finds it amazing that he has such a young friend with so much mana and warmth inside her, and Rudia says she brought Larson to give him a gift. Excited, the man says that's great, and that you must return the favor. Japel wonders what she means by favor, and that she called that bastard kind. He now realizes that the villagers are quite favorable toward him, so he questions what that bastard did to deserve it, but decides it doesn't matter, and that none of the protectors were paying attention to him, wondering what that wretched boy is doing behind everyone's back and since when. Rudia grabs the boy's arm and tells him to come with her, saying she's going to give him a present. Sometime later in a forest, that guardian observes something in surprise. Approaching a tomb, the girl says it's there. The guardian thinks it's a stone tomb, while Rudia begins to chant something. Then the stones start heating up magically, but suddenly, everything stops, and out of nowhere, a chalice emerges from within the stones. Japel is very surprised by the situation. He wonders what the hell that is and sees that the fire energy is moving inside the golden chalice. He's shocked. He said he was just going to play and eat chocolate. Was that a lie too? He also feels a strange energy coming from the cup. Our hero realizes that this is the chalice of fire. On the terminal, it says that a configuration from another world has been discovered and that it possesses incomplete plausibility, and that the water is only drinkable for those who have contracted with a flame familiar. If a non-contractor drinks it, they'll feel pain and eventually die. Not believing it, he thinks, wait, I have to accept the fire pact to drink this flaming water. He realizes that the flaming water becomes regular water over time, so he doesn't have much time left and needs to decide quickly. If he accepts the pact, he'll have to control Rudia's extremely simple mind himself. He wonders if he can do it, since it was hard even for Kaysen. However, he knows he won't get another opportunity like this and wonders what author Che-sung would do in this situation. Then he realizes what the author would do and says, Rudia. Following up, he says it's the fire pact. They should do it. Larson tells the girl to make the pact with him, saying they should do it quickly because there's not much time. Rudia, all cheerful, activates a spell as she agrees. A terminal appears, showing that the hidden arrangement of the chalice has taken shape and now the object recognizes the sacred fire pact. The man notices something is happening with the light. Slowly, it looks like that light is recovering. He also questions whether the boy came to play and eat chocolates, but he now believes everything was planned. The observer sees that it's the first time he's seen such pure and clean fire mana being as powerful as the Third Lady's magic. But now he confirms it for sure. Surprised, the man believes the information about the seventh young master has changed. Looking a bit tired, the girl says that the pact is now complete. Larson receives a notification on the terminal showing that the pact is complete, that the girl swore to be the flame contractor, and that a change has occurred that will affect the story. Suddenly, it feels like energy surrounds our hero, and he realizes the heat he was feeling has vanished. Another notification appears on the terminal saying that the chalice witnessed a sacred pact and because of that, was promoted to chalice of pure fire. Holding the object, the boy notices that the flaming water has improved into pure flaming water. He turns to drink it, and the taste of the water reminds him of sparkling water. Another notification appears, informing about the ingestion of the liquid and also stating that the hero needs a power to control the pure heat contained within it. Larson notices that the heat forming in his stomach rises toward his heart, while a new notification appears about mana cultivation controlling the heat. At the same time that his body temperature starts to drop, the boy entrusts his safety to the protector. The man notices that the boy is cultivating his mana, and though it's not an excellent method, he wonders if he'll really do it in open space. Uneasy, he questions whether the boy trusts him that much, since even a small disruption in mana cultivation can cause serious damage to his body. Japel thinks the seventh young master must already know that information. Larson says he trusts his protector. While casting a protective field spell, the man decides to return trust with trust. A notification appears, informing that magic combat has begun, along with self-regeneration. The young boy feels that the liquid wasn't just any water, as it begins to create scratches of all sizes in his heart. Another notification shows that the easy mana cultivation succeeded in controlling the pure flaming water, and that it was absorbed by the body. The next terminal begins to explain the effects of the liquid, but the information is cut short due to lack of mana, and Larson thinks it's better to review it later. Night falls, and Japel checks in with the boy to see if he's finished, to which he replies yes, though it took longer than expected. And finally, he thanks the man for protecting him. The protector says he was just doing his job and congratulates our hero for gaining some power, to which the boy replies it was nothing much. The man explains that this is the entrance to the Dragon Mountain range, and Larson says he already knew that. He also adds that powerful mana presences, felt since halfway up the range, are approaching without hiding their presence. They're making it clear they're coming. The redhead questions this information and Japel confirms it, saying the powerful mana that surged from the golden chalice likely attracted them. Surprised, the boy couldn't believe a strong mage would consider what they did to be powerful, but the man explains that they are probably swordsmen, judging by the nature of the magic. He also says they are approaching quickly, that the three of them will encounter them soon, and that he can't say for sure if the group is hostile. The Protector believes the pursuers are likely highly skilled. Worried, Larson knows that swordsmen and mages compete and don't get along well, and he doesn't know why they are coming after him, but he knows he can't run. The boy understands that if he flees from confrontation, he'll be purged by his father even before his 10th birthday, especially since he's just a first circle mage, so he decides to wait for the enemies. And suddenly, they arrive at his temporary resting place. To better understand who he'll be fighting, the redhead activates his divine eye. But it seems something unexpected happens. An important enough variable occurs to significantly affect the probability in the story. The true protagonist who receives chances and lucky encounters, a person stolen from a cliché novel, and the monster created by Cho-sung. The terminal reports that standing there is the powerful character known as Kaisen Sade, and in despair, the boy wonders why he is there. For a moment that felt eternal, the two groups stare at each other. Larson observes the other young boy, who is the second young master of the renowned swordsman clan Sade, and who has a blue eagle engraved on his left chest. There stands the strong boy, followed closely by the spiritual guardians of his clan. A terminal states that the three renowned clans of the world have a special ability to recognize each other, one that is born into members of these families. Just as the redhead recognized him, the other boy must have recognized the son of the Maiden clan. Slowly, Kaisen walked until he was right in front of the other group. He bows, saying he came after sensing a powerful wave of mana, and our hero thinks the boy seems so refined and graceful, even though he's only 9 years old. Larson asks about the wave of mana, and the boy replies that the guardians informed him of a burst of fire mana, which he also felt himself. Surprised, the redhead reflects that Japel said the same thing, wonders why they're acting like this, wants to know why they came, and the other says he was just curious. Another terminal appears, explaining that the boy was very curious in his childhood and always satisfied that curiosity, which was one of the foundations of his growth. Our hero says it seems like they knew who he was, but the young swordsman says he just thought he was from the Maiden clan and assumed he was the 6th young master. He adds that he found it strange because that master had learned water attribute magic, and the one standing in front of him showed no trace of that type of magic. Sade asks if he might be the 5th young master, and the redhead doesn't know how to respond, wondering if he should let him think that or not. In the end, Larson believes it would be far worse if Kaisen finds out he lied, so he prefers to tell the truth, informing him that the 5th master is his brother. Shocked, the swordsman wants to know if he is the 7th young master, and the hero laughs as he asks if he really seemed that different from the rumors. In shock, the pursuers affirm that the boy is indeed very different from the rumors. The redhead states that now that the two young men are friends, they can speak casually, and the other agrees. The terminal says that Kaisen was good at everything, but lacked one thing. He had no friends. After all, who would befriend the son of a renowned swordsman clan? Rudia approaches, asking if that one is also a friend, and Larson reflects that people like her were the only ones who could become his true companions. Smiling, the child says she is 9 years old, that the boy is very handsome, and says her own name. A bit awkward, he replies that he's Kaisen. Trying to change the subject, he turns to the redhead. I'm curious about that mana wave, can you explain it to me? Sade asks if it was some kind of special opportunity, and the boy says yes, even though it was something he created himself, then wants to know what kind of power the mana was. Larson says it was the power to protect from external stimuli, like poison, and the swordsman finds that pretty cool. Worried, Japel observes that if the other clan attacks, they'll have no choice but to be defeated, since that other side is stronger. Paying attention, he sees that for now they are speaking cautiously. Rudia pays closer attention to what Kaisen is carrying and asks if she can touch his sword, and the boy wonders how she's so comfortable with him, though he doesn't mind. Our hero believes he shouldn't meet the other young man again for a while, and thinks it's best to leave a good impression as he extends his hand. He adds that it's his first time meeting someone from the Sade clan and that they're the same age. The swordsman shakes his hand, saying it's also his first time meeting someone his age, and in the end they both say, deal. The redhead says he heard that this clan fights before becoming friends and asks what the name of that fight is. Kaisen confirms, saying it's called a martial arts challenge, and asks if the boy wants to try something like that. He also heard that it's a necessary step for a friendship bond to form, but the boy says it's not exactly that way. Still, the swordsman thought it was better to do it. Activating some kind of power, he asks if our hero is really inviting him to a martial arts challenge. Excited, Larson confirms, thinking that this is the perfect opportunity to confirm the current difference between them. Once more, the swordsman wants to know if he's really being invited to a duel, and the redhead replies yes, visibly thrilled. Watching from afar, a cautious Japel wonders if the boy is really challenging the other in that situation, a situation in which the opposing side has two of the spiritual guardians. He notes that safety isn't guaranteed there, but that doesn't mean he can interfere. The 7th young master is of the main lineage of the Maiden clan, and the protector knows he can't stop something done by that lineage without proper justification. On top of that, this is a moment when a rival of the clan is watching them, and this kind of attitude could be seen as a sign of weakness from the Maiden. Kaysen asks if the other has also trained in the art of the sword, and Larson replies that he trained in magical combat. The swordsman says he heard that kind of combat is a rarely practiced technique, and the redhead says he's only good at that. Sade tries to understand why the boy would want challenge with him, since people from the Magic clan usually don't like them. The young Maiden fires back, "You don't have any friends, do you?" The spiritual guardians react with surprise at such an unusual question, and Japel also doesn't understand where the boy is going with that. Calmly, Larson says he doesn't either, that the same happens with him. Not knowing what to say, the swordsman remains silent, and the redhead adds that they are geniuses. Our hero says that for him it's even harder to make friends because his clan doesn't allow it. The only exception is when the other party is at his level through family connections, but that's just weird and not real friendship. Larson says that's why he has no friends, but if it's Kaysen, he believes the clan will allow it. In the end, that's the reason the young man is calling him to a duel, and a notification appears stating that the Divine Eye is configuring due to a lack of probability. It shows that for the Swordsman clan, the challenge is used to determine trust between two parties, and the redhead says that if they can't rely on trust, they could get hurt. Kaysen says the boy is right, while another notification explains that a weaker person challenging someone stronger is a greater sign of trust because it requires courage. Our hero knows he is the weaker side and mentions that he uses magical combat, asking the swordsman to consider a martial technique. Upon unsheathing his sword, Sade says he'll only use basic swordsmanship techniques from his clan. He adds that since his opponent is bare-handed while he has a weapon, he'll grant the first 3 moves to the other. Larson asks who the boy thinks will win and immediately answers that obviously it'll be the young man. He also asks why he requested the challenge and if it matters who wins, and Kaysen says it's because the redhead wants to be his friend. The young master says, "It doesn't matter who wins in a martial arts duel, and that wasn't the reason I did it. I did it because I want to be your friend." Our hero says that friends need a fair and equal relationship and pleads for the dark-haired boy to treat him as an equal. The swordsman apologizes and explains he wasn't insulting him, and the redhead replies that he knows. Young Maiden says he'll do his best and asks the other to do the same. It seems the time has finally come. The 7th youth and the 2nd young master of the Sade clan will begin the duel. Kaysen launches a direct thrust with his sword incredibly fast, and the boy struggles to dodge. The notification states that the slow the flow attribute has been activated. Our hero is shocked that as soon as the young man announced his attack, the tip of his sword moved almost at the speed of light. Another notification shows that magical combat has begun and that proficient weight use was applied. Larson starts calculating his jumps. He leaps into attack with all his skill, believing he can win the fight. It looks like a counterattack is coming from the swordsman. The sword again passes very close to the hero, who wonders how the other is so fast, he can't even close the distance. Larson reflects, "If I want to use magical combat properly, I need to get closer somehow," but Kaysen is protecting his space. The young master knows that if he doesn't figure out how to approach, he'll remain in the sword's range, and his situation is already worse because the other can attack from a distance too. So that's the protagonist's true power. Before, our hero had no intention of winning, but now he has an idea. To Kase's attribute, the redhead can read the path of his attacks, and as long as that works, he can move in closer. Maiden prepares for another attack while simultaneously reading the swordsman's sequence, but unfortunately, his prediction fails and the boy executes a different attack right after. Since Larson didn't respond to the move, the young man decided to make a real attack that the first couldn't dodge and will get hit by. The powerful blow lands, and a terminal reports that resolute willpower was used. Our hero feels the impact of the attack. Even with his own resources to assist him, he feels pain. The young master believed the best alternative was to block with his arm instead of his torso, but this impact caused a problem in his mana. Master Sade points his sword at Larson's face. Kneeling in pain and with Kassen ready to strike again, the boy accepts his defeat. Japel, after watching the entire duel, is left in disbelief at its outcome, though he sees it as a good thing that it didn't end in an accident. As he sheathes his weapon, the swordsman asks if the boy's arm is okay, and the other reassures him that it is, though his whole body is numb. Still, Sade thinks that was an impressive defense, though our hero doesn't quite believe it since he didn't block properly. The young man insists he found it impressive and was surprised by the sudden sparks, and Larson doesn't understand what he's talking about. The redhead sees Rudia still sitting in her corner and wonders if she did something secretly, since it happened so fast he didn't even notice it. The young master of the Sade clan reveals that the sword is an artifact. He also says the object can cut through even steel, and young master Maiden is terrified since he was struck by it. Kaysen held back his strength to reduce the weapon's destructive power while reinforcing the boy's defense technique, and Larson thanks him, saying their skill levels are different. The swordsman steps closer and offers his hand. Helping Larson to his feet, he says that people seem to struggle more, and the redhead replies that compared to Sade, everyone else is just too weak. Smiling, our hero asks if Sade is weird, and the other says it's not strange for someone to struggle against someone stronger, while the hero says he simply trusted him. The young master of the swordsman clan happily says it's his first time meeting someone like a maiden. He starts walking away, saying he's glad to have met the boy and hopes they'll meet again soon. And as if they had teleported, the Sade clan disappears. Notification. A variable that could have a major impact on the story and probability has occurred. Larson is startled. Another variable just happened. Japel politely asks to pose a question that might be beyond his position, and the young master grants permission. The protector wants to know at what point the boy learned lightning attribute magic. Not understanding, Larson wonders when and then thinks about it. Remembering what Kazin said about sudden sparks, Larson thinks he might be able to feel something. A strange power surrounds his hands, and he feels the same warmth inside his heart. Analyzing this power, he sees that it's not very strong, but it's definitely there, mana imbued with heat. Larson thinks it's not anything overly powerful, but it's definitely there, mana imbued with heat. He decides to reassess the situation using the Divine Eye, but suddenly the boy attacks with his sword, forcing our hero to defend himself with magic. And with a squeezing motion of his hand, he shatters the opponent's weapon, leaving him completely shocked. He thinks that's what happened, as the terminal says that fire attribute mana fused with the flaming water, and both with mana cultivation. He concludes that because he drank the pure water instead of the normal one, he became capable of using elemental mana, but it's nearly impossible to use that in magical combat. And those who can are high-level mages like the third young lady, and because it's not that effective, they often avoid using it. Japel, surprised, asks how he managed to do it, and our hero says he doesn't know either. He thinks, no way the master doesn't know. What he really means is he doesn't want to say, basically telling him to shut up. He realizes everything that happened today was planned by the young master and wonders if the encounter with Case and Sade was part of the plan too. He concludes that someone of higher status must be involved, someone with the authority of the third young lady, and that he needs to be cautious with his actions. Then finally says he'll guide him to the Maiden clan, while the young master thanks him. Rudia, head down, tells him to take back what he said, leaving our hero confused. Yelling, she says if he doesn't take it back, she'll burn everything. Stammering, Larson says okay, but take back what? Then suddenly remembers, him saying he had no friends and that the same applied to him. Screaming, she says she thought they were friends, that's why she even made the fire pact. He thinks, surprised, that a friend must really be important to a 9-year-old child, so he says that yes, she's his friend, and the girl questions that. Nervously, he says he takes back what he said, and the girl asks if he means it, and the boy says he just spoke without thinking and apologizes. Smiling happy, she asks again if he really means it, and our hero says yes, that she really is his friend. Then she says for Larson to never forget that she's his friend, and that she'll forgive him because it was the first time, while he agrees. Somewhere else, someone says that bastard really went out just to eat chocolate. One boy says he's living a great life, while the other questions why the patriarch lets him do whatever he wants. That man says there are many ways to kill him and make it look like an accident, while Japel thinks this is all very strange. Because the patriarch is keeping him alive with exile as the only punishment, he suspects something's really off. And maybe, when he remembers Larson saying that even though he's currently loyal to the fourth brother, he could serve the second sister. Just maybe he wasn't bluffing. On January 1st, year 219, at midnight, a grand banquet is served. Soso thanks Hera for being there, and the maid says she feels flattered. The Divine Eye shows the girl's data, and our hero asks why it keeps activating on its own. Then Larson asks what kind of person his dad is. Even in Cho-sun's memories, Larson didn't remember much about his father, and he never actually got to meet him. In fact, it seems he was very afraid of his dad. It was almost as if he had erased his memories of his father on purpose, so if his mother replies, he is. And she adds that he's a lonely man. This leaves our hero deep in thought. On the terminal, it appears that Patriarch Decatra only loved the servant Soso, meaning Soso was the only woman he truly loved, which surprises Larson. Suddenly, a voice fills the room saying, "Calling me a lonely man, huh?" And a frame on the wall begins to emit energy. Out of nowhere, a swirl of fire appears inside the painting, and a man steps out, radiating immense magical energy. With a stern look, he scans the room. Very surprised, our hero stammers and says, "D Decatra." Sorcerer stands up and greets the patriarch. While the man says that was a rude thing to say, our hero also greets his father. He thinks that just the man's presence alone was enough to raise the pressure in the entire room. How can a human do something like that? Our hero realizes he can barely breathe, and just looking at the patriarch, his body is signaling danger. The man addresses our hero, who responds right away, and then says he heard that some unpleasant things happened with his brother. Larson says that if he's referring to what happened with the Six, then it's true, thinking that knowing his father's personality, he probably won't blame him. He tells himself it's just a role he's playing and that he needs to be more confident. Then the patriarch asks why he did it, and Larson assumes it's a test. He explains that his brother tried to discipline him using fists instead of magic, so the father asks if that's why he did what he did, and he confirms it was for honor. He adds that his brother was wrong, so he responded using the commandments of mana. The patriarch asks if he's saying he did nothing wrong then. Larson explains that as a mage, he wanted to end things quickly, and the man asks if that's why he overdid it. But Larson says he doesn't think he overdid anything. He says he didn't cause any fatal injuries and wanted his brother to be more aware when using magical combat, similarly to martial arts, and that he doesn't believe the point of the succession battle is just to create a bloody fight between brothers. He adds that he realized the real enemies are the Sade clan and the Grando clan, and the goal should be to make them bow to their family. Smiling, the patriarch says that's a good thing to say. Larson says the sixth brother should be thanking him for showing how important it is to keep distance when facing a martial clan. Excited, the patriarch says he never had expectations for the sixth and seventh sons, but the seventh is far better. And he says that if he's still holding a grudge about what happened and he's not qualified to be a maiden, thinking that he can't stop trembling, Larson wonders if that was enough. He continues observing the patriarch, reading the message on the terminal that Soso was the only woman he ever loved. On the terminal, he sees that the reason he survived until age 17 was because he was Soso's son. And now that he thinks about it, surviving this long never really made much sense. The novel never mentioned the details, but Soso was supposed to die a few years later due to the blue stains. In the past, Dekatra exiled the woman to the Tetsugo Annex and never visited her again. And because he was a bastard, Larson didn't have the power to protect his mother. He was just an incompetent son who couldn't help even the patriarch. Dekatra treated Soso coldly on purpose and exiled her in preparation for that day, so that his true love couldn't be used as a weakness, because the other mothers probably knew about his love for her. Larson then realizes that the conclusion is simple if he can live up to his name. If he can just become strong enough to protect his mother, everything will change. He thinks that Dekatra also hopes he'll become strong, so Larson says he's thinking he has to do his best. Larson says that, as he mentioned, magical combat is limited, and the man says it's weak. That's like a half-finished technique. The boy says that just because something is limited doesn't mean he should sit and do nothing, but he also says that if it doesn't work at the start, it won't work in the end either. He adds that, however, he can support the person who will become the clan leader because his magic may have limits, but his potential as a person is still undefined. And he asks please not to forget that he still carries his father's blood. He says he will definitely rise higher and climb over every difficulty to protect his mother, leaving the woman surprised. The man seems satisfied with what he hears. A letter says to go to the maiden banquet hall, and our hero realizes it's a letter from Dekatra. He thinks that although it's ridiculously short to be called a letter, it means the maiden clan's tradition of the 10th birthday banquet has been scheduled. In this tradition, when a member turns 10, everyone gathers and celebrates with a simple banquet. But there's something even more important. It's the occasion where the physical enhancement matrix is installed. Unlike ordinary enhancement for a mage, it's a method that allows him to gain elemental mana for his attribute, adjusting his suit elegantly. Our hero thinks that things are very different from when he first transmigrated, not only his appearance, but also his mental state. Then he and his mate arrive at the main banquet hall of the maiden estate. Our hero walks in, thinking this is the venue for the main 10th birthday banquet. He sees on the terminal that the magical release effect is permanently imbued in that table, and Larson notes how extravagant they are. He then asks his maid where his seat is, and she says the young master's place is there, facing the clan leader, so he asks about his mother. Harris says that from what she heard, she wasn't invited, and our hero says that's what he figured. Suddenly, someone yells asking if it's him. And very angrily, the sixth brother shouts, asking if he's Larson. Our hero replies, "Oh brother, hello. How's the spot where I hit you doing now?" The boy thinks this Brad is very different, and that he was getting full of himself. But suddenly Larson says, "Brother, there's no way. You're thinking you only lost because you were caught off guard," and says he can challenge him anytime, but it'll hurt more now because he's improved a lot. Angrily, the sixth walks past him saying he'll soon make him meal and calls him an insect. And Larson taunts him back saying of course and to try his best, thinking that instead of trembling in fear, this is way better. Suddenly, Persia enters the banquet, calling him her cutest little brother, saying he arrived quickly. She asks if he's having fun with the toy he brought last time, and he tells her she's good at playing with fire, so Persia says she wanted it. But she adds that a bet is still a bet, and the sixth is shocked to hear that the third sister made a bet with that pile of trash. And to make things worse, he realizes he even won the bet, and that this is unbelievable. Another person arrives at the event and catches our hero off guard. Then the last Archmage, Evelia Maiden, enters the room, and Larson thinks that as the next leader, she is an impressive Archmage. Although she is kind, she will do anything for the honor of the clan. She's a 7th circle mage, and her attributes are light and darkness. But beyond that, she is a character who is decapitated by the protagonist, Kaysen. And ironically, she is Kaysen's first love. The one comments that she can see the youngest has changed drastically, and he says to his older sister that he'll take that as a compliment, and she agrees. Our hero thinks he's going to go crazy, and now that he's seen Persia and Evelia at least once, he's certain that just gathering his own people without courage won't be enough, and even if he rises as much as he can, he doubts he'll reach even the mid-level. 2 more people arrive at the banquet, and after that, his siblings keep arriving. Then finally, the family patriarch arrives. It's Dekatra, along with his 3 wives. The eldest is absent, so there are 6 children, making a total of 10 people gathered. He begins to speak, saying that the youngest has turned 10 years old and congratulates him. Then everyone starts congratulating the boy, who feels really awkward and shyly thanks them. Yahello says that following their father's orders, she returned after defeating the Balrog demon that emerged from the waters of the Spring of Chaos and Darkness. Larson thinks this meeting isn't simple, and it doesn't end after some tea. It's where the siblings can show what they've been up to. One of them says he defeated the necromancer from the north and sealed her in a coffin, and afterward, they massacred around 20 necromancer followers of hers. The patriarch asks about the clan's casualties, but he says he was the only one present for the necromancer's subjugation. Then the leader says it was a good job, and as the man sits down, he thanks him. Then Persia stands up. She says she brought Sylvia's wings, which were consecrated in the abandoned temple. Our hero is surprised by this information, and the terminal shows that she stole the divine artifact that had been kept in the abandoned temple. Larson thinks this is an artifact that can drastically enhance the wind attribute called wind affinity, and it looks like she took down a lot of people. Decatra says it seems they made an example out of the temple and asks what the Holy Kingdom's response was, but the mage says there hasn't been one yet. Then he says the most they could ask for would be an apology. Persia asks what to do, and the patriarch replies to ignore them. Larson thinks that someone from the Holy Kingdom must have offended a member of the Maiden clan, so Decatra retaliated. After all, they never declared war against the clan. Suddenly someone knocks at the door and the leader tells them to come in. A well-dressed man enters carrying a box. He's Senken, a pawn of Decatra. He places the box beside the clan head. Decatra then tells him to make his choice among several objects. Our hero thinks these are scrolls for body reinforcement to be given by Decatra himself. He activates his divine eyes and is surprised by what he sees. The mana wavelengths of the 7 scrolls are gathering together and creating a single scroll. Something urges him to take it, so the boy reaches out and grabbing the scroll says, "I choose this." Persia is very surprised by this, and the other brother thinks it happened instantly. Yahello is also surprised and thinks he chose the transcendent attribute. Holding the scroll close, he says he chooses this one. Everyone at the event falls silent but is deeply surprised. The patriarch calls out to Yahello, and she responds to her father. Then he asks if she told him about this, but the woman says no. Persia says she didn't, and the other brother denies it as well. Decatra then asks, "Are you telling me a 10-year-old boy analyzed the mana on his own? Something even you, Yahello, couldn't do at his age?" The Archmage says she believes he has a better eye than she did at that age. Persia thinks that's interesting and that she didn't expect him to do that. The eldest sister continues and says maybe he's talented in magical combat. After all, that style develops very quickly in the beginning. Then the patriarch asks if that's why Larson, at 10 years old, could do this, and the woman says that's the best explanation for now. No one had that technique before. Then the man says to bring him the scroll of the transcendent attribute. The terminal explains that in the celebration ritual for turning 10, scrolls are offered for the child to choose one. Red is fire, blue is water, silver is the steel attribute, brown is earth, yellow is lightning, black is shadow, and white is light. Then by combining all 7 using proper methods, it's possible to materialize a system-wide elemental attribute, which is a transcendental attribute that allows control over all 7 others. Our hero thinks it's just a mix of them all, that having all in one isn't necessarily a good thing, but still. The patriarch says he didn't expect him to choose this one, and Larson says he'll take that as a compliment. The 6th brother gets furious, thinking, what kind of attitude is that toward father? Has he lost his sense of fear? He wonders if he should stay quiet. Then the leader says Yahello will be in charge of the magical operation for physical enhancement. Larson says he thought his father would handle it himself, but the father replies that if he did, the chance of him dying would be 99%, though if he insists, he'll do it. Frightened, Larson thinks that part hadn't been explained, 99% chance of dying, and the father says that with Yahello, the chances rise to 50%. He starts wondering if it was foolish to choose the Transcendent Scroll, but now there's no going back, and with determination, he thinks he can do it. Turning to Yahello, he says he's counting on his sister, and she asks if he trusts her. Larson says he trusts her as a mage. She says that in her opinion, the chances are even lower, because that attribute involves a very heavy and destructive mana and process. Our hero asks what chances she thinks he has. She says 50% in the best case scenario, and he asks, even if you do your best. Then she replies, 50%. He asks if he should choose another attribute, but the woman says those who walk the path of magic do not impose their visions on others. Then she says she hopes he becomes strong. This leaves our hero a bit surprised. Determined, he says he will stick with this choice. Then she tells him to take off all his clothes. Embarrassed, he asks, and she says, except for your underwear. So Larson begins to undress and reveals that he's in good shape. While Persia admires her little brother, she thinks who would look at that body and say it's from a 10-year-old boy? A month ago, he wasn't like that, and she's curious how he chose the scroll. Observing that muscular body, she wonders what other secrets he hides. Then she comments that it's a great body and a perfect face for decoration, shocking our hero. Yahello places her hand on her brother and says, "Father, Larsen's 10-year ritual," and gives thanks for the opportunity to conduct the magical operation of physical enhancement. Suddenly, the boy asks his sister to wait. She asks if he's scared, but he replies that it's not that. He adds that he has something to say to his father. Everyone at the table is surprised by this. The patriarch asks what it is, and he asks that if he survives to please do him a favor. The siblings think asking for a favor is reckless. What kind of idiot asks for a favor during a 10-year ritual? He says it's the Maiden family tradition that the patriarch oversees this operation and that although Yahello is very skilled, she's nowhere near as skilled as he is, so he believes he deserves a special favor. The sixth sibling gets excited, thinking he's a crazy bastard and hopes their father kills him for it. Dekatra asks what the favor would be, and he asks that from now on, his mother be allowed to be present there along with the others, which shocks everyone at the table. One wife says that inferior thing cannot be present there. The boy asks why, and she says his birth and origins are different from theirs. He says he is his father's son, and half his blood comes from his mother. That calling his mother inferior is indirectly calling him inferior, and since his blood is also his father's, it's also calling his father inferior. The patriarch asks why he wants this, and our hero responds that it's because his mother wants to see him the father. He thinks this might make the other 3 mothers his enemies, but that's okay. It's better to have his father on his side than those 3. He continues, saying his mother is his father's only weakness, and then asks if that inferior thing dares to want to see him, and it's impertinent. But he says fine, that if he survives, he will grant him this favor, leaving the other women shocked. Then the father tells him to try to stay alive, and Larsen thinks he won't let him down, that he'll do his best. He concludes that this is only halfway there, and then Yahello says she will begin the operation. Then she begins to recite, "He who walks the path of magic, following the commandments of magic and the 10-year ritual, I, Yahello, command you. You who must lead the will of transcendence be enveloped by the great and furious mana." That mana energy begins to affect Larsen. He thinks it's too hot and feels as if he's been branded. And suddenly, a voice says it will help him, coming from somewhere dark. Our hero realizes he feels all his limbs, but also doesn't, and realizes he remembers this sensation. He remembers it's the same as when he was anesthetized in the hospital. Out of nowhere, a fire sphere appears in front of him saying, "Hello," giving the boy a huge fright. Looking at it, he wonders what it is. But suddenly, he seems to realize something and is surprised, thinking this is the Holy Grail of Fire. That cute chalice asks if he remembers who it is, and our hero says it's the Holy Grail of Fire. He thinks he was in the middle of a physical enhancement magic operation, so he wonders where he is and why that chalice is there. But the sad object says he's wrong, that he's not the Holy Grail. Larsen then asks what it is then. The chalice explains that its true name is the Holy Grail of Transcendence, making our hero surprisingly ask, what? Larsen realizes he can't analyze it with his celestial eye, and the chalice says that Kervil got confused and infused fire mana into it. And a bit irritated, he says he doesn't need to know who Kertel is, that he's just some old man, but our hero questions the name. He realizes it's the Archmage from the legends, and that if the wizard Alberto, a made-up character, called himself a great mage, there are many who believe Kertel was real. Continuing on, the chalice says that he finally wants to help his big bro right there, and Larsen wonders why a cup would have a male gender. So he asks how it's going to help him, and the chalice says he has a very special body, leaving the boy confused. It explains that back when it was created, bodies like his were called celestial bodies, because his body is very strong, but not strong enough to handle the mana he's trying to take in now as his magic circle is saturated. It asks the boy what he thinks would happen if that destructive power entered his body right now. Larsen says he'd die, and the chalice confirms it. And it adds that it doesn't want him to die because that would be boring and it would have to go back to sleep for another half-century. So the boy asks how it will help. The chalice says it will consume the mana in his place because it tastes really good, and the boy thinks he has to trust it or his body will implode. At the terminal, it says the Holy Grail had been desperately searching for its master and ended up in Kaysen's hands, but he didn't act that way. The object says it's hard to explain, but he has the qualifications to be its master, and the boy questions that. Then it explains that his very existence is full of holes, and that's a prerequisite to having it. Confused, Larsen asks what that means, and the chalice says he'll understand with time, but for now, it will get straight to the point, and our hero agrees. Fireworks bursting all around, it tells him to become its master. It says it has melted into his heart and will devour the mana, so Larsen asks what will happen. He says it will be reborn as the Chalice of Transcendence. In a blurry vision, he sees his sister Yahello, and his chalice says there are many strange magics, telling him not to worry because that older sister will take care of it. It says it will rest in his heart and return when needed, and our hero questions it, but it replies that he'll need to use it a lot in the future. At the terminal, it says the Holy Grail of Transcendence will form another mana circle, and he realizes he's receiving a new mana circle. He thinks about not accepting its help, but is startled when his body starts disappearing. He believes if he vanishes, everything will die. Determined, he says he doesn't want to die because there's still so much he needs to do, thinking of his mother Soso. Screaming, he says, "Holy Grail of Transcendence, I will be your master." The object says that's a wise choice and unleashes a massive manifestation of magic. Our hero is shocked, wondering what that is, concluding it must be the power of the Holy Grail of Transcendence. Yahello tells their father that the magic enhancement operation is complete, and he says it was a job well done. On the floor, our hero lies down, breathing heavily. He's in shock when he realizes he's alive and wonders if it was all a dream. But he concludes it definitely wasn't because his heart feels different, and then Yahello says the operation is over. But there's a catch. The father asks if she's saying it wasn't a success, and our hero starts to worry. She says yes, that due to a physical trait she didn't notice, the mana and scroll were extinguished, and it happened because she wasn't good enough. Decatra stands and says it's his fate, and so the 10-year ritual of Larson Maiden ends. But our hero thinks it wasn't extinguished. It was consumed by the Holy Grail of Transcendence. As the patriarch walks up the stairs, he says, "Father, you promised to bring my mother here." And the man looks at him seriously, saying that a promise should only be made by those who deserve it and must be kept by all who make one. Excited, Larson thinks he managed to make some progress as everyone leaves the hall. But he's surprised that Decatra and Yahello know nothing about the chalice even after the operation, and he's glad it didn't appear externally. The boy believes he's gained another powerful ally, and the physical enhancement operation was a great success. He tells his maid they're going back, but suddenly something different happens. He looks at Hera and feels like he's staring at a very sharp assassin's blade. He realizes the girl is releasing her aura, and then she says she'd like to ask something. While our hero realizes that his eye can't analyze her, he becomes frightened by the lack of even basic information. The terminal states that the highest level of magical security is present at the location, and he knows the only mage with the power to use something like that is Decatra. She asks if he's aware of what he's discovered, and Larson asks if he should be. She explains that his attitude toward her has changed significantly. Without showing emotion, she asks, "Who?" and follows up by asking who he thinks hired her. He replies that he assumes it was his father, so she asks why he thinks that, and it's because she's not hiding her aura while his father is present. Harris says that's interesting, and asks if he can feel her aura. Excited, he says it's sharp and thrilling and a little scary, to which she replies that it's because he's weak. Larson says, of course, it's only been a short time since he turned 10. The girl agrees, but asks if that's reason enough to assume his father hired her. He thinks she's so terrifying that it makes him want to run away. But if his father hired her, she can't harm him, so he says she used her aura and nobody showed up, even though there are plenty who could detect it. Therefore, there must be something else preventing the aura from being detected, something like a security spell. And no one could cast that at the main house under his father's nose without his permission, so she must have been ordered to reveal who she really is. She confirms, saying she could have done anything to him if he couldn't analyze the situation. Our hero wonders, anything she wanted, that if he's part of the Maiden family, he should be able to figure this out. Larson says that's exactly the kind of thing his father would say. She says she's not disappointed, but he says he is, deeply, and asks why she decided to reveal herself now, after hiding so well for so long. Larson says it's the perfect time, because today, he came to the main house and met his father. The day he cast a secret barrier, and today, his father. Preparing to fight, he says it's the day his father wants to test him. Suddenly, the girl draws her weapon, and preparing for battle, she says he's correct. She says she didn't believe he'd be able to figure out that part, so he asks what she thought would happen. Hera says she thought he wet himself when he saw her aura, and he asks if maybe she's underestimating him a little. Adjusting her clothes, the maid says she will introduce herself properly. She says her true name is Silent and Without Sound, but he may continue calling her Hera. Tense, our hero thinks that's a character he created himself. He remembers when he was a child and his mother would threaten that if he misbehaved, the Silent and Without Sound one would come and take him away. Larson thinks this woman is an assassin even the strongest men in the world fear, and that the swordsman's family is also after her, but they always fail. The character was extremely discreet, with almost no information available about her. He thinks, what the hell? This woman is right in front of me now. He wonders how such a powerful assassin could look so young. He says he's heard of her and that people are after her, but she says that was 15 years ago. Our hero asks if her appearance is fake, but she says she won't answer that. Our hero asks how she's going to test him, if she'll give him a challenge, but the girl says he should know her specialty is assassination. So, if he can deflect even one of her attacks, and disappearing from the spot she was in, she finishes by saying, then victory will be his. Person uses his divine eye, but it reports no presence detected. He's surprised, thinking not even the celestial eye can sense her, and then a voice says, he told me, and continues, saying to get rid of him if he's too weak, leaving our hero terrified at the thought. Then he raises his hand and stammers, asking her to wait. The girl from some unknown location tells him to speak. He asks what she'll do for him if he wins, but the woman clearly falls silent. She appears and says she didn't expect him to ask for a reward. Larson is startled that she appeared behind him, thinking he'd heard her in front of him. Hera asks what he wants, and he says he wants her to stay with him from now on. Then she says she is his servant and will do so, but he says, not as a servant. Our hero tells her to protect him, since she herself said he is weak, and that until he becomes strong enough, she must protect him. Hera seems a bit thoughtful and responds that it's fine. Excited, the boy thinks that should be enough. Then he prepares for the fight again while the girl disappears, saying the test begins now. Larson thinks he was confident, but he needs to be able to feel something in order to react, but not even his celestial eye can detect her. He concludes that if he can't see her with his divine eye, he won't be able to predict her movements and she'll remain hidden until she attacks. He thinks that getting rid of him is an empty threat and she won't strike his neck or his heart, so if he can't tell where she's coming from, he'll have to defend himself by taking the blow. He thinks she must be holding back and is limited in where she can hit him, only using blows that won't threaten his life. He believes he'll be able to detect her location the moment she attacks, and besides, he has slow flow and the divine eye. Slow flow doesn't just slow down time, it also lets him see mana in slow motion. Looking at his own mana, he notices something has changed. At the terminal, it says the sealed mana within his heart is reacting to the enemy's intent, activating the advanced self-defense ability. Larson realizes the Holy Grail released mana inside his heart to enhance all his abilities, and suddenly he's able to see how Hera is going to attack him. He thinks it will be his side or his leg, but a second later he sees with even greater clarity. And when she's already very close, he realizes it's going to be his leg. So he thinks he could dodge it if he wanted to, but he won't be able to deflect the attack if he dodges, and it would make sense not to deflect it. At the terminal, it says this self-defense technique is in action, and he decides he'll take the blow. And with a swift move, he prepares his counterattack. At the terminal, it says the proficient weight use technique has been activated, and our hero channels his power into his fist to strike. But Hera catches his attack easily, then says he almost hit her chin. So Larson asks what she thought, and if that counted as a deflection, and Hera says yes, it does. Sheathing her weapon, she says she'll keep her promise, and that from this day on, she swears to protect young Master Larson with everything she has. And in the next moment, she vanishes, leaving our hero alone. It seems he sacrificed his hand a little for that, but quite satisfied, he thinks he passed the test. Meanwhile, in a simpler place, someone enters through a door without being seen, closing the door behind them quickly. It's a much simpler and apparently empty room, but out of nowhere, Hera appears in it, saying she's starting her report. She says the 7th young master seemed to guess the trajectory of her attack. Otherwise, there's no way to explain how he deflected her strike. And beyond that, she believes he didn't dodge on purpose, so she assumes he realized she wouldn't kill him. There would be no other way to deflect her attack. She thinks it was a wise decision, but something unique happened. She explains her dagger was coated with Milia poison, and even so, he grabbed it with bare hands. And although the poison did penetrate, he was fine. She says she's trying to figure out why, but for now, she believes his mana neutralized the poison. The important thing is whether it was luck or intentional. Disappearing in the next second, she says she'll try to find out. Leaving that place, she thinks she knew he had changed, but didn't expect him to deflect and neutralize Milia poison. She thinks he has changed a lot over the past month, and at this pace, she believes he's worthy of protection. It was met in that beautiful city. Our hero was walking and thinking that the day had been exhausting, and he'd take the chance to relax, since they let him go for a walk. Out of nowhere, the chalice appears and asks if he did well. Startled, Larson says he didn't know it had a physical form. Looking around, he says it can't just pop up like that, but the cup asks why not, since only he can see it. And it adds that he can compliment him, but our hero asks what for, and it explains that the pretty girl had Melia on her dagger. Larson asks what Melia is. The terminal explains that it's a lethal poison extracted from starfish, and in shock, he asks if there was really lethal poison on her dagger. Stammering, the boy asks if he ate it to get rid of it, but the chalice says he didn't get rid of it, it's in his stomach. It would have been a waste to remove it, but warns that he better be careful. If his stomach takes a strong hit and he vomits the poison, his body will melt. Then the master yells for his assistant, who's already on his way, running in a hurry. Panting, he answers his master, who asks if he knows what Melia is. The boy says yes, it's rare, but he can get it, and our hero thinks he won't be using that, hoping he stops thinking up such strange things. Then he asks about an antidote, and the boy says the antidote is much easier to find. He gives the order to go get it, and the boy runs off, saying he'll find it right away. Larson thinks he's glad his shadow's main attribute is poison. His maid is an assassin, and his shadow a master of poisons. Suddenly, someone approaches him. Looking up in surprise, he sees that it's Hera. She explains that to support him in the best way possible, she has been reassigned to the position of shadow. She adds that a new maid will replace her. He asks if he'll have 2 shadows, and she says yes, asking if that's a problem. Larson notices her change in attitude, and she says she no longer needs a mask. The boy says she's very good at acting and asks if she knew that, but she explains that acting is a requirement for assassins. He directly asks if she put lethal poison on her dagger, and Hera asks if he knew. The boy says yes, but pretended not to, but thinking about it made him angry, and he asks why she would do that if she didn't intend to kill him. She asks why he pretended not to know. He says it was to show that he'd be fine without the antidote, so she wouldn't underestimate him so much. Then she says it is a lethal poison. She says it's made from starfish, and Hera asks if he also knew that. He confirms, though he's only just discovered it. The assassin thinks he doesn't just have excellent physical abilities. she really underestimated him. She says he's become much stronger and that she promised to protect him. So our hero asks, but the new shadow says she will do so only until he's strong enough and that he must grow stronger so she can be free of that responsibility. Larson says he'll do his best and she says she'll help him. Curious, he asks how she will do that. Hera says she'll think about it, and as his shadow, she'll protect him however she can, no matter what she has to do. He asks if she can bring fig powder from the eastern lands, and she says she can. So the boy asks her to do it. The shadow confirms she understands, while our boy wonders why he's so hungry, and then shouts, asking why he's so thirsty, and tells Hera he needs water too. She says fig powder is very bitter, and she's not sure why, but she thinks he should drink it with water. He asks why she doesn't get a doctor, then says there's no time. Drinking the water, he says it's not enough, he needs much more. While he drinks the water, the girl wonders what this is. Becoming surprised, she realizes something is happening. Something is changing. Larson keeps drinking as energy begins to emanate from him. The terminal says a requirement has been met, that fig powder reacts with the lethal poison Melia to expand. Inside the boy, the chalice says it's getting high. Feeling sick, it says it's going to throw up. Our hero drops the glass of water to the ground as he feels something with his heart. Clutching his chest, he realizes it's expanding. Hera is shocked and realizes it's a mana expansion. She wonders if she should take him to a priest, but if he moves now, he could die and she needs to protect him. It's her job. She remembers her promise to protect him until he becomes strong. But she's not a mage and doesn't know how to help. She concludes there's only one solution. Determined, she thinks she'll need to absorb the mana and die in his place. The terminal says that Ether and Melia rapidly expand when combined, and only someone with a transcendent attribute can handle it. Trying to endure it, he wonders why he keeps having near-death experiences. He thinks his heart is expanding, but he can manage a little because his attribute is transcendent. He uses mana cultivation to help, but feels like his rib just got broken from the effects. At the terminal, it says that even those with a transcendent attribute don't handle this perfectly. It's just an attribute, leaving our hero startled. He realizes he could die because to deal with this, he'd need the blessed body of a renowned martial arts family. But the information says that, alternatively, someone with a celestial body can endure the expansion, and this also surprises our hero. Straining himself, he realizes that with a celestial body, he might be able to endure it. The chalice says it's feeling better, and that he can trust it. The boy thinks it must be the holy grail of transcendence. The chalice says the boy's ability helped it a lot, and he figures it must be talking about the mana cultivation skill. Hera remains there, watching the boy struggle to master the power. She shields herself from the light and notices there's something happening to his chest. His chest is returning to normal, and the mana expansion has definitely begun, but he managed to stop it, and she's surprised he did it on his own. Suddenly, flames appear on our hero, and a huge blaze of fire covers him and the surrounding area. Protecting herself with her arm, she thinks something has changed. Growing more and more surprised, she asks how. Death, as far as she knows, this shouldn't be possible, while something happens to Larson's magic circles. As he continues his task, she wonders how he became a second circle mage. She thinks she's never seen anyone reach that circle at age 10, but there are indeed 2 circles. Larson asks Hera if she's going to just stand there staring at him, and she apologizes, congratulating him. Surprised, he asks if she can see them, and she says yes, that he reached the second circle. He confirms and says he almost died. Hera asks if he managed to calm the mana expansion on his own, then says it's expected since he was born with a blessed heart and mana. Our hero feels a bit annoyed that she never gives him a proper compliment. He thinks the poison, the fig powder, the transcendental mana, the attributes of his body, the chalice, and his mana, all were requirements met purely by coincidence. Then he calls for the shadow, and she replies, yes, young master. He asks if she wants to repeat like last time, and she questions what he means by repeat. Meanwhile, at the Fola building, Noah was taking a peaceful nap during work hours, but suddenly, someone calls his name and he jumps up saying it's him and that he was just thinking. He's surprised to see the young master there, and our hero says it's been quite a while, so he asks what brings him there so late. Suddenly, it seems Noah notices something about the boy. He sees his second circle and wonders if he's seen things because the kid definitely only had 1 circle a month ago. He notices the maid by his side looks like an assassin, and he remembers what Japel said, that he thought there was a big plan behind all this and then better be prepared. Japel said someone was planning something with the 7th master, and now Noah believes he was right. He thinks the boy is far too relaxed for a 10-year-old with 2 circles. He thinks it's dangerous and better not to investigate further, so he asks how he can help them. Larson says he'll have a duel with his shadow, and Noah wonders when the maid became his shadow. Then the manager asks if a large open space would work, and the boy confirms that it would. Hera gives the manager a good look at that moment, and the man, scared, thinks he should just play dumb. Already at the training center, Larson asks if Hera observed his skills in the last fight, and the woman says yes. He asks if she can duel with his current skill level in mind. She asks if that's without considering the second circle, and he says he wants to try something new. The girl asks what she should do, and Larson tells her not to kill him and to attack a bit more slowly. But she says an enemy won't be that kind, and he corrects her by saying she's not his enemy, but his shadow, leaving the girl surprised. She says he's right, drawing her sword while thinking, his shadow. And our hero thinks that now that he's a second circle mage, the amount of mana he can contain has changed. He realizes he understands how to move his mana however he wants now. He decides to spread it throughout his whole body, and the terminal shows that due to advanced mana, the level of magical combat is rising. And now he possesses a beginner-level magical combat technique, so excitedly he says she can go. Immediately, the girl disappears. He analyzes the situation. It follows the same pattern as last time, but he still can't see her. However, the divine eye can now perceive her movements. He concludes this is the difference between 1 and 2 circles. He thinks his slow flow must also be stronger now, but that Hera is stubborn. He activates his slow flow ability and realizes she'll probably try to attack his leg again. But this time he's going to dodge, and when the attacker appears, that's exactly what he does. Hera is surprised that he dodged and wonders if he can see her. With great agility, Larson prepares for his counterattack, and with a lot of power, he closes in on his opponent. It seems like his attack will work this time, catching Hera truly off guard. But in the next moment, his hand swipes through empty space. She's no longer there. Then a blade appears at his neck, to his surprise. Larson realizes she's incredibly strong and that his celestial eye didn't catch her last move. So he admits he lost the duel. She says she promised to use the same skills as before, but he's gotten stronger, and she broke that promise. She didn't expect the difference to be that big. Excited, he asks if she's complimenting him, but she says of course not, that he's still really weak, and he asks if she can't just compliment him, but she says empty praise is poison. Meanwhile, someone is watching them closely through a crystal ball, and seems a bit tense about what he's seeing in their training. Noah, terrified, wonders what he's witnessing. He thinks a 10-year-old mage shouldn't be able to move like that. The movements of that assassin would barely be detected by any detection magic, and the power of the attack isn't even comparable to last month. But the scariest part was the assassin's last move. He's never seen or heard of anything like it. He thinks he didn't see anything and knows nothing, and Larson says they're leaving, apologizing for the time. Noah tells the master to take care, shocked by the apology. But out of nowhere, a blade appears at the man's neck before he can even see it coming. And Hera is behind him, telling him to forget everything he saw today, but he insists he was in the bathroom and saw nothing. She says the master has reached the second circle but still can't control this power and asks if he understands. Noah pretends to be surprised and says it's news to him. Second circle at that age. Leaving a small cut there, she says she's glad he's not stupid. And in the next moment, she disappears from behind the man. Frightened, the manager wonders what's going on here. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, someone counts 245, 246. Our hero keeps exercising. Hera calls for the young master and says a letter has arrived for him, and the boy wonders about the letter. Without stopping his exercises, he takes the letter and starts looking at it curiously, but suddenly falls flat on his back as Hampton, startled, asks if the young master is alright. Trembling slightly, he tries to speak but can't, ending up stammering, and says that the renowned swordsman family sent account to him while thinking that he never wrote anything like that, so this is a variable. Our hero walks through the mansion, concerned. As he goes, he thinks that Dekatra summoned him, and likely it's because of the invitation from the Sades. Our hero asks that the main house be informed, and Hera asks the main house. He explains that he already went through the 10-year ritual, so now he must join the Maton family's succession war, and that he needs to enter the tiger's den to slay it. He thinks it might be better to stand by the tiger if possible, and suddenly a girl in a tree yells that she also wants to slay a tiger, and he asks if Rudia came too. He says that Kaysen also wants to be his friend, and happily, she says that's great because she doesn't have many friends. Larson analyzes the future from the author's perspective. He received an invitation from the swordsman family, his greatest rival, and that could mean many things. Entering the enormous hall, he sees the patriarch in the distance. Watching the scene, he thinks it turned out just as he thought. His sister Avelia is also there, and he concludes that the world he created is going to change the original and create a new one. The terminal displays that a variable influencing the plot probability has occurred. Our hero asks if he was called, and the patriarch says yes, so he asks if he would like to give an order. But the man says he must know why he was called there, and the boy asks if it's because of the invitation from the Sades. Suddenly, a candle in the room goes out, and a powerful ice magic approaches our hero, coming very close to his neck, leaving him frightened. Then he asks why he's deliberately setting up this kind of situation. But Dekatra asks what makes him think it was on purpose, so Larson says if he wanted to kill him, he'd already be dead. He adds that he didn't kill him looking at the ice, and that he doesn't believe he did anything wrong. Dekatra firmly says that the Sades should crawl at his feet, and our hero says he agrees with that feeling, that they will lick his feet like dogs and crawl like insects, but the patriarch says his behavior doesn't reflect that. Larson says that, as he mentioned before, he met Kaysen and Hiren, and then Kaysen requested a duel, and by their standards, a duel is a ritual to form bonds in a certain way. The patriarch asks how he knew Kaysen would be there, but the boy says it was by chance, that he saw it as an opportunity to humiliate them. Then the head asks if he requested a duel, and Larson says that hidden magic is more terrifying than visible magic. Avelia thinks she already sensed it during the 10-year ritual, but that child has changed. She wonders why this rumor started. and that a person doesn't change their essence. If Larson was always like this, it means someone altered the information on purpose. Thoughtful, she thinks it's someone capable of doing that. Avelia curiously observes her father. Our hero says that since he completed the ritual, he is now an official member of the family, therefore he intends to participate in the succession war. But his siblings have already established their territories and earned their followers within the family. He adds that he doesn't think it's unfair. He was simply born late, but he believes he cannot grow stronger within the family. Therefore, he believes there is a need to establish his own power outside the family, and the man asks if he'll bring outsiders into his sibling quarrel. But the boy says it's his only choice. The patriarch asks if he's aware of what he's saying there. Larson says yes, and that he befriended Kaysen to make him his dog, and that a well-trained wolf can even hunt a tiger. Then the father adds that sometimes the wolf may eat its own master, while our hero replies, "Father, as you yourself said, if it happens, it's fate, and it will be fate if he gets eaten." He says he will train him like a dog, not as a swordsman, but as a renowned dog who barks and crawls when ordered. In a well-lit place, someone calls out Larson's name. The boy replies to his sister, who asks if he expected that to happen when he received the invitation. He answers yes, but didn't imagine she would be the one to go with him. Larson thinks that he wouldn't have let him go alone, so he would have sent a guard, someone trustworthy who could defend the cause. His sister says he talks as if he rehearsed the conversation in his head several times, and the boy says his brain freezes if he doesn't practice beforehand. Then she says that at his age, she wouldn't be able to talk like that in front of their father. She asks if he'll allow her to ask a question. Larson is a bit surprised by that. Avelia then asks if the magical enhancement ritual had truly failed, and our hero promptly responds that it did not. His sister asks what happened to the transcendental mana that was in the scroll. Saying he's sorry, he tells her he can't reveal that, and she asks why. He then says it was their father who told him to keep it a secret. Avelia says she understands, and now she's sure that Larson is a variable their father assigned. As they look at each other, she thinks that if that weren't the case, Larson wouldn't be able to talk about him. And how she uses that variable will depend on her ability, and if she doesn't use it well, their father will hand him over to another sibling. She believes he gave her this opportunity first. While staring at him intently, she thinks that she must raise him. Larson says there's something he wants to show her, and his sister asks what it is. Smiling, he concentrates his power into his fist, and suddenly releases that energy, seemingly very pleased with the result. Avelia is surprised by something too, and thinks that it's impossible that he has reached transcendental mana. Avelia is shocked by what she's seeing. While our hero asks if she can see it, she says she can feel the full power of the mana, and that its base is fire. Larson thinks she's right, and that she's also looking at the fire mana inside him. Then his sister says, Larson, and tells him not to push himself too hard because she's already seen his potential. He's a bit confused, not understanding what she means by pushing too hard. She explains that holding a physical form of mana is harmful to the heart. Still confused, he thinks he didn't know that. Avelia says he's young and not used to heart pain, and that he must already have issues for reaching the second circle at such a young age. He must not force himself so much. She says she would like to see him thrive a little longer. So Larson says he's fine, but wonders why she's being so nice. He realizes now that their father didn't say anything about him having reached the second circle, while his sister asks what he plans to do. He says the swordsman family probably didn't invite just them, and she says the Grandels are likely going too. An alliance could change the world. Someone around the same age and skill level as the martial arts family will also be going, and that person is the only daughter of the renowned martial arts family, Rosalind. He says that family will use the opportunity they created to come to the Vestia continent, and a girl says yes. Larson says he'll go ahead and wait for them, so his sister asks why. He answers that, like she said, he was rude to the Grandels. He remembers hitting a girl and saying she looked like a fish, and asking enthusiastically if she wanted to be beaten to death, and says the reason for his exile was hitting Rosalind. Larson says he's going to apologize, and Avelia is surprised by that. He follows up by saying he was wrong. His sister says the renowned magic family bows to no one, and he corrects her by saying a mage doesn't bow if their honor is intact. But when a mage loses their honor, he says he believes it's a different story. The woman stays silent, watching, and he continues, saying he hit Rosalind and was a mage who didn't act like one and should apologize. He wonders how he even managed to hit someone from a family with stronger physiques if he only gained magical combat after obtaining this body. The terminal explains that Rosalind is the only daughter of the martial arts family, and unlike others, she believes hurting others is barbaric. He thinks that when Rosalind appears in the future, she has a violent and fierce personality and starts to question why. He believes she realized for the first time the frustration of being powerless and trained hard because of it, with Patriarch Fawn Grandel excited to train her. He believes it was his fault. She's a martial arts genius, and the renowned martial arts family values that. It seems like a butterfly effect. A secondary character had a massive impact on a character from the world. Avelia says he's the special guest, and adds that he should do whatever he wants. She'll simply support him. The group continues across the sunflower field toward the third gate. Rudia says she's really excited and asks if there will be tasty food there, and our hero says he's sure there will be plenty. She says Kasid is a nice boy, but Hampton thinks they're heading into enemy lines with an enemy very close. That Said is the swordsman family they'll have to face one day, and he thinks Lord Larson might be too tolerant and also very considerate. He believes Larson has great plans in mind and is very happy to be going on this great journey as his shadow. Hera watches, confused as to why the boy is crying. The group continues their journey through the third gate across the sunflower fields. After that, they pass through the night forest at the seventh gate. Then they arrive at the Black Sea, located at the first gate, until they reach the Cemetery of Swords, which is the first gate. Our hero, shocked, thinks they passed through 22 gates to reach the central one, and that it wasn't very pleasant, while Hampton apologizes for being weak. He observes and thinks that the Cemetery of Swords is one of the largest gates near the Said family. It has a sinister name, but it's actually a pretty charming little town. Evelia asks her little brother if he's okay, and the boy says yes. Then she says that, according to the plan, the Grand Elves should arrive in 4 hours. Larson says he'll train mana-breathing techniques in the meantime and tells them to head to the hotel. His sister confirms. While our hero meditates in training, his sister watches him closely and wonders what her brother's next revelation will be. Meanwhile, in the Patriarch's chamber, he calls for Sikin. He says he saw the youngest just a short while ago, while the man asks if he's talking about Lord Larson, and the Patriarch confirms. He asks if the magic ritual failed, but Decatra says no, it was a success. Sikin replies that it seemed like a failure to him. Decatra explains that it's settled in his heart, surprising the man, but says he can't describe it, as he's never felt that before. But it melted Larson's heart, and he believes it might be the Holy Grail of Transcendence. As the young man asks about the Holy Grail, Decatra says he traveled the world with Kurtel, and before Kurtel died, he came to realize that the chalice wasn't actually a Holy Grail of Transcendence. The boy says he's never heard that. He explains that the first Patriarch was very clear with Kurtel at the time, and the chalice disappeared with his death. After that, people forgot about it. He investigated and discovered that the girl he brought is from the Fire Clan, and because of that, he's certain the boy can absorb anything into his heart. Decatra asks if he knows what the first Patriarch called the Holy Grail of Transcendence, and the young man says no. Then he adds that he called it Support Circle. He says it's the first time he's heard that, and the Lord says Kurtel used to call it a portable charger. He assumes it means battery. The young man asks if he's sure Larson absorbed the chalice, and Decatra says there's no other explanation for it. Confused, he asks what that means, and the Patriarch continues explaining that the boy has the second circle and is able to handle elemental mana, which leaves the young man very surprised. He continues to saying both were prodigies in their childhood. One had talent in mana, the other in physical strength. Then he asks Sikin if he could become a second circle mage at just 10 years old, and Sikin says maybe, but that he would die from the side effects, and he couldn't do it at 17, maybe not even at 20. But that damn youngest is doing it at just 10 years old, and that's very impressive. Decatra agrees but asks why now? Why didn't he see this talent before he turned 10? He tells Sikin he's hiding something and has been for a while, but he'll give him a mission. Very willingly, Sikin says to just tell him what he needs to do, so Decatra asks him to observe Larson and make sure he doesn't die. And Sikin asks for how long. Then the Lord looks at him seriously, and after a pause and silence, says, "Until I die." Suddenly, something disrupts our hero's meditation, and he realizes the renowned martial arts family has arrived. He sees them up high on the stairs. He thinks their power is different from the renowned family of swordsmen, and smiling, our hero says, "Long time no see, Rosalind." But Burly Man says, "Long time indeed." Our hero says the girl's name Rosalind. She looks confused and asks who he is. But upon taking a closer look at the boy, she remembers him hitting her and saying her face looked like a fish. Then she realizes who the boy is and is shocked. With a burst of energy, she lunges toward him, landing right in front of him, then asks why he's here. This surprises Larson, who thinks she just launched from up there. A bit nervous, he says he came to apologize, and the girl questions the apology. She starts laughing uncontrollably. Very irritated, she asks an apology, while Larson realizes she seems much angrier than he expected. From up above, the man starts laughing and asks if he shouldn't greet his elders first as he approaches, and Rosalind says, "Uncle." Our hero bows respectfully and greets him, and the man asks if by chance he knows who he is. He replies yes, he's the vanguard leader of the Grand Elf family, and follows up by asking if he's Magner, the king of combat, and the man confirms he's correct. Magner is the second strongest person in the Grand Elf family, Rosalind's uncle and brother of the current Patriarch. It could be said he's stronger than the Patriarch himself. The elder says he planned to give him a serious scolding when he met him. Larson says that's not the way of the renowned martial arts family. Surprised, the man realizes the boy isn't intimidated by him. The boy says he was wrong, so he'll apologize in their way, and the girl, excited, asks if he'll do it according to her family's custom. Then, full of rage, she says, "Fine, then I'll kill you." And he strikes an attack at our hero, while the older man thinks it's impressive. With that attack stopped right in front of him, Magner thinks the boy didn't hesitate. Rosalind laughs and says she thought he'd be scared. Then, preparing another attack, she says, "All right, try blocking this one." The terminal says that slow flow was applied and auto defense will activate automatically. Then that attack lands directly on the boy, and he really feels that blow. It sends him flying with the impact. He bounces across the ground as the old man just watches. He wonders if that was martial arts magic, and if he's not mistaken, the mage family calls it magical combat technique. Larson thinks he may not be as strong as him, but at least he managed to use his magic to defend himself. Annoyed, the girl asks what he's doing there and why he's just standing around. Our hero then apologizes and she asks, "What?" Nervously, he says he was wrong 2 years ago and that he's really sorry, and thinks that apologizing isn't hard since he lives in this society. Furiously, she asks what the hell that's supposed to mean. He says it's just that she was way too beautiful, and the girl doesn't understand at all. He says she knows how boys are, he just wanted to get her attention, so he bullied her. For a moment, it seems like she understands. But in the next moment, she kicks our hero. Larson clutches his knee where he was hit, and the terminal says that auto defense technique will be activated automatically. Rosalind says it's boring and confused. He asks, "What is?" She explains that it sucks to hit someone who doesn't fight back and that he needs to fight too. Only then will she feel better. Then, getting up, he says, "All right, but not now." Magner starts clapping. He says that this isn't the proper place, while the girl says she'll only feel better after killing this bastard. The man tells her to look around, and the commoners are watching and commenting on the fight. Larson says this isn't a good place to fight because it's crowded, but the fired-up girl asks who cares. Our hero says people could get hurt if they fight there, and that leaves Rosalind surprised and speechless. Meanwhile, the old man is satisfied and thinks that was quite wise for a boy. The girl then questions him because he said he'd apologize, so Larson says yes, but he'll do it in a better way, which makes the girl curious. Magner interrupts and says they need to go to the Sade household, catching the girl off guard, and adds that they can deal with it there. Someone says he's good at acting, and our hero wonders whose voice that is. He's told to pretend to be friendly for now so there won't be rumors of a fight. Surprised, he realizes he's hearing the old man's voice without him speaking. The terminal shows that he took interest in the boy and that it will influence the scenario. Larson thinks he can see how he'll analyze his actions. It appears that the celestial mage has doubts about the world's lack of probability, and Larson wonders if this celestial mage is Deketra. He concludes that he managed to influence 2 important characters and the requirements were met. Larson believes they are Deketra and the King of Combat, Magner. Suddenly, something happens and the terminal says Larson will receive the creator's privilege related to probability and that a new one has been created. Surprised, he wonders what that is while reading that you received the creator's privilege and that the lack of probability setting has been granted. Suddenly, something appears in front of him, and a very ordinary-looking book falls into his hands. He's shocked when he realizes what it is. And in the book, it says one phrase, "Loves chocolate." Then he realizes it's a setting he created. He sees that it also shows what he wrote. There he sees that he wrote, "Larvian loves chocolates." That he defined Persia's hobby as cutting people. And that Hera has absolute discretion and silence. And that she's an assassin, even the strongest fear. He realizes there are more blank spaces than words. It's a half-complete configuration, so he imagines the setting was only halfway done. He thinks, probability. Why did I possess Larson? Why are these opportunities and these plot points happening? Suddenly, the book disappears, and a message notifies him that he's reached the time limit for using the settings. He realizes it vanished and that he can only look at it for a limited time. He figures it lasted 1 minute, and maybe he needs certain requirements. The man says they should head to the restaurant that Yahello is waiting, and our hero confirms while imagining what the future will be like. Arriving at a restaurant in that beautiful city, someone cheerfully says it's been a long time for Yahello, and she confirms that it has. A bit too excited, he says it seems like she's gotten stronger since the last time he saw her. Then she says she believes she'll be able to defeat him in 5 years, and the old man laughs, saying he'll accept her challenge anytime. She says she could have challenged him at any time when she was younger, but now she can't. Larson knows she's important to the family now. Smiling gently, he says she's lost her childish cuteness. He says that when she was younger, she used to charge at him no matter the time or place. And there was even that time she burned all his hair while he was sleeping. Yahello says she was trying to burn his head but failed, and the man bursts out laughing, while Larson thinks it's hard to keep up with the conversation. A little shy, Rosalind says, "Hello," and introduces herself as a daughter of the Grandel family, asking if Yahello remembers they met 2 years ago. At that moment, our hero thinks, what the hell? This is the same girl from just now. She says she wants to be as strong as Yahello, and Yahello says she understands that she still can't use her fighting spirit. Swordsmen use swords as their weapon, just as mages use their magic. And martial artists use their physical abilities, and fighting spirit can be used to make the body defy physics and do the impossible. Overly excited, she says she'll train her fighting spirit to become as strong as Yahello, and Yahello replies that she can't wait. After a hearty meal, Evelia says the portal will be reactivated today at 5:17 p.m. She says she'll open it herself, and the old man says of course, while our hero notices the two of them ate everything. She explains there's still an hour left and excuses herself, saying she needs to discuss something with the boy, and a nervous Larson thinks, with me. Magner stands and asks if they'll meet at the portal at 5:17, and Evelia confirms, yes, they'll meet there. In another place, the woman says, my cute little brother, and asks how about they talk about what happened. Larson asks if it's about what happened at the portal. Then his sister says yes and asks if he planned it. He says yes, and she continues, asking if he knew she would attack him. The boy confirms that yes, that's why he went. Evelia says that if he was trying to ease her resentment, he could have mentioned the Sade family's demilitarized arena and offered to settle things there. Larson asks if she's questioning why he used his magic combat technique, and his sister says yes. Then he says it's because Magner, the king of combat, was there. He's the second strongest person in the Grandel family, and Larson believes he must be thinking about how effectively he used that technique. Evelia thinks, magic combat technique and Magner, could it be? And even though Larson's technique was above expectations for a 10-year-old, Magner would also notice the amount of mana in the boy. Larson has a reputation for being a scoundrel, so the most logical conclusion would be that the boy has changed, or that he was raised as a variable. She thinks that Larson should know Magner very well, and it was impressive to create this situation. Then our hero says, so maybe, and asks if he'll think that he's a variable developed by the Maiden family. If so, he says Magner will want to find out everything about him, and this leaves his sister slightly impressed. She remembers her father telling her to make it obvious that he's a variable, and she thinks she understands why he said that. But she knows the magic combat technique has a limit to its potential, but his planning ability, considering everything, is excellent. And most importantly, he's only 10 years old and has more potential than anyone. She thinks that regardless of her father's orders, she wants to make this child one of hers. She says she met Magner at 14 and asks if he knows the Maiden successors go through a pilgrimage. Larson confirms. He says he didn't even know who Magner was at the time, and if he had, he would have tried harder to kill him. The boy says she says brutal things so calmly. He remembers a moment when she was wounded, and says that Magner told her to kill him if she was upset, and then he'd give her 3 chances. Our hero thinks he doesn't know how many memories she has with him, but they seem to be good ones. She says he really is the type who learns everything about something he's interested in, even if it's a teenage mage trying to kill him. Larson asks if he's curious, then walks over himself, and his sister confirms, so the boy says he thinks he'll learn a lot from him. She says there are still 30 minutes left, and the boy says yes, so she suggests they have a little sibling outing. She says there must be a lot to see since it's a commercial city, and our hero asks if she's been to many commercial cities. Looking at it thoughtfully, she says yes, but says most of the commercial cities she went to were destroyed, and that it was because of her. Larson walks over to his sister, and taking her hand, he says, let's go. Smiling gently, he says he'll show her the way, and Evelia seems happy with the moment they're sharing. The two of them walk along the beach, leaving footprints in the sand, strolling like two simple siblings. Meanwhile, in the city, Magner and Rosalind walk through the local shops and eat even more. He thinks that 2 years ago, 8-year-old Larson was extremely rotten. But now he's a completely different person, remembering how concerned he was about fighting there and hurting innocents. He thinks no one changes that much in just 2 years. People don't change. So it must mean that the old Larson was just a facade, and that his image was distorted. He wonders what the Maidens are aiming for by doing something like this. He thinks there must be a plan. The Sades invited them just as extras, and wonders if they want a connection between the Sades and the Maidens. He believes something is going on, and he knows the Grandel family is weaker than the other two families. And if something unpredictable happens, the Grandel family could be swallowed up by the other two, and if Larson is in the middle of those plans. Quite excited, he decides he's going to figure out what they're planning. Everyone gathers in front of the portal as Evelia says they're going in now. Smiling, Magner says it's an honor to be in a portal operated by her, and the woman asks them to be careful during the transport. And she tells him not to forget that he still has a chance, so the man says, oh crap, I'll be careful. Finally, they all head toward the portal. Rosalind thinks she's feeling dizzy, and that it feels like her body and mind are separating. Arriving in a different place, Evelia says they finally arrived. Magner asks if she didn't try anything, and she says she was being nice because there's a cute child with them. Someone shouts, calling out to Larson and Rudia, and the boy responds, asking if they're tired from the trip. Magner is surprised and thinks it's Case and Sade, the heir of the family, and notes that the Sade family has never come to greet them before. Smiling, our hero says it's been a while, and the boy says he's grown since the last time they saw each other. Larson says it's because of magic. Jumping between the two boys and striking the ground, Rudia bursts in, shouting energetically. With an exaggerated jealous outburst, she says that she's the person closest to Larson, that it's her, Rudia. And the boy says he doesn't think friendship has a hierarchy, and explains that they get along in mind and in intention, so they decided to be friends. He asks if that isn't what matters, and the girl softly asks our hero what he's talking about with that intention stuff. She insists she's closer to him, and the boy says he'll be her friend too, and she stammers, asking if that's true. Holding her hand more calmly, she says she'll be his friend too, and he thanks her. Then she says it's nothing. Someone approaches them, calling out to young Master Kason, and Rosalind walks up, saying not to forget her, that she was also invited. He apologizes for being rude, saying he got too excited to see his friends. Bowing, he welcomes her. Kason says it's an honor to meet someone of such an honorable lineage, and the girl says he doesn't need to be so formal, but he replies that with time. Rosalind finds it annoying that he acts like that with her, but is so kind and casual with those two. Magner, satisfied, thinks that Cunning Boy seems to have created that kind of dynamic on purpose. He realizes Larson isn't just some ordinary 10-year-old boy, it's like there's a 100-year-old snake controlling him. Larson says he has a favorite Ask Kason, and he asks what it is. Then Larson says he'd like to have a duel with Rosalind right there. The boy is quite surprised, and Larson asks if he could provide him a place where they can duel. The old man thinks that the families are watching this duel and that this place will be the stage for the debut of that scoundrel Larson. Sometime later, someone asks who they think will win the duel. One says Larson is a brat and will lose, but another says Rosalind still can't control her fighting spirit, and a third says physical strength will decide. Someone asks if that means Rosalind already has the victory, but they comment that it's interesting that Larson's skills involve magic combat. Karshasade, the family patriarch, asks his son what he thinks about the duel, and he says he's jealous, and his father says, of course, dueling with a friend is a lot of fun. Kason says the world seems to see Larson as a stupid scoundrel, and he used to think that too, but realized he's actually a good guy. He also believes he's a great rival. The patriarch asks, a rival? You already have a rival at your age. He says yes, and that for now, he's stronger, and his father smiles and says he understands. Karshia thinks the information about that boy was deliberately distorted, so that can only mean one thing. Larson is the hidden variable of the Maton family, and this stage was created by Decatra. The patriarch asks who he thinks will win, and the boy says he believes Larson would win. His father asks why he would win, and he explains that the boy will lose. His father, curious, asks what he means by that. Then Kason says Larson has a soft heart. Interested, the man says it looks like he'll have to attend the duel tomorrow too. His son, surprised, asks if he's really going, and says then he can introduce his friends to him, and Karshia says, my son's friends, I'm excited. The next day at the Skyblade field, prepared for the fight, Rosalind says she's been waiting for this day. Our hero says he needs to take control of this stage, and that it wouldn't make sense to look like a normal boy here. Outside, other notable figures are watching everything. Inside, Larson thinks he needs to accept that this is his debut stage. Then, already ready, Rosalind says she's coming, and charges toward our hero at full speed as his slow flow ability activates automatically. He thinks that in terms of physical combat, he has the advantage. That's because Rosalind still can't control her fighting spirit, and suddenly, leaping skillfully in front of him, she strikes Larson's arm hard while the magic combat self-defense technique activates at the same moment. Rosalind is surprised, thinking she was going to break his arm and ribs, but it was like kicking water. Evelia and Magner are shocked outside the arena. Then Rosalind says he shouldn't get cocky just because he blocked the attack, that it was pure luck. Rushing our hero again, she says he still has a long way to go, and with a shout, she prepares a new punch attack, striking him with a lot of force while Larson blocks her attack again. This time he counterattacks, but the girl manages to dodge and hops back, putting distance between herself and her opponent. Rosalind looks pretty out of breath and red-faced, while Larson remains steady and calm. Outside the arena, Kason and his father are surprised by something, and beside them, Evelia and Magner look no less surprised. The old man realizes that Larson is reading Rosalind's attacks at least 2 steps ahead, and thinks like father like son, and that the rumors about Larson were definitely fabricated. He believes that boy received strict training from the Maton family. Rosalind, irritated, thinks he's just defending and keeping his distance, and wonders why. Magner notices that he just saw an opening to attack Rosalind, and as time passes, she's using more force out of frustration. As she gets more frustrated, she ends up creating more openings, and Larson is using those chances to gain the upper hand. And he does this while only taking non-lethal blows. He knows this is only possible if his skill level is far superior to his opponent's. He concludes that Larson keeps defending while showing he's more skilled than her, and believes that's the Maton family's training. Magic combat has the lowest magic rank, yet he's doing much better than a martial artist, and despite being kids, both have potential. He believes there are only 2 reasons to act this way. One is to show that lesser techniques can be better than martial arts, and the other is to demonstrate the power of the Maton family in front of the 3 renowned families. Karshia says they're thinking the same thing. Magner agrees. The old man says it looks like the boy was raised as a specialized magic combat mage, and the patriarch agrees with that idea. But he wonders why he's revealing that now, and that since he's been developing magical combat techniques in secret, he must want to test and refine them in real combat. Magner says he's sure the boy knows they've realized this, and the patriarch asks if it's a provocation. Then the old man says yes. Yahello thinks, so that's what Larson was planning, while Kaysen is surprised. Irritated, she asks how long he's going to stay on the defensive, and our hero says, until she's not mad at him anymore. Preparing another strike, she says, so that's your plan. The terminal says Rosalind is using fighting spirit and advises him to at least pretend to be a little tired. The girl hits him with significant force now, catching our hero off guard with the impact. This time, he really seems to feel the blow, and falls to the ground, coughing and badly hurt. Rosalind asks why he didn't dodge the attack. Smiling, he says he thought she wanted him to at least take one hit. Irritated, Rosalind asks what kind of duel this is. She throws a vial into his hands and tells him to drink it. Then our hero wonders if that's a potion. Then she turns and says she lost the duel, surprising our hero, who asks, "What?" Rosalind says he's annoying and that he probably didn't notice she used her fighting spirit, and that she doesn't want to stay mad at someone being so kind. Then she says she'll forgive him because she broke his ribs and won't hold a grudge about the past. Wounded, our hero thanks her. Kaysen jumps over the divider, shouting for his friend. Young Kaysen always looks at the world with optimism and is inspired by friendship, trust, and camaraderie among battle allies. He says he can see he's gotten stronger, and Larson says these techniques evolve quickly in the beginning. Feeling happy, the boy was inspired by his fight. Then Kaysen says he's really happy his friend became so strong, but suddenly our hero thinks, wait, could it be? Kaysen then officially asks to duel with his friend Larson Maiden, and our hero thinks, I knew it. He says he appreciates the sentiment, but he's tired from the duel with Rosalind and explains that combat techniques use a lot of mana. The boy is surprised, and Larson says he wants to duel him when he's in top condition, and it's the least he can do for him. He adds that if they duel now with all his excitement, he doesn't think he'd survive it. Kaysen thanks him, and our hero says it's nothing. Then he asks if it can be tomorrow, and Larson thinks he wants to duel as a birthday present. Finally, he says that's fine, and the terminal notifies that his injuries have been healed. Approaching Rosalind, he says he has a favor to ask her, and the girl asks what it is. Then he says that earlier she used her fighting spirit. Rosalind asks if he came to humiliate her, but our hero says she knows he wouldn't do that. Then she asks what it is. The boy explains that he felt something when she hit him, surprising her a bit. Larson says he doesn't know what it is, but he noticed something. It's on the tip of his tongue, but he can't quite name it. Tense, she asks what he's talking about. He asks her to please help him because he thinks her martial arts techniques will help him get stronger, and she asks why she should help him. Larson then says to think of it as a debt he'll repay in the future. Rosalind thinks about how she's been promising herself every night that she'd get her revenge, but now everything's ruined. Magner approaches, laughing, and says Rosalind can go ahead and try, but the girl protests, but uncle. He says doing a public favor for the son of a renowned magic family isn't a bad idea. Standing up, she says she'll help him, just this once, and Larson thanks her. Rosalind adds that he better make sure to repay that debt. Our hero swears by the honor of a future mage that he will repay it, and Yahello thinks, the honor of a mage. Smiling, she thinks he actually said that, and that it's the same as declaring he's joining the succession war as a potential candidate. On top of that, he's saying it in front of important people from renowned families. Rosalind asks if she just has to hit him like before, and the boy confirms, yes, he's ready for it. The terminal says that the auto-defense technique has been activated, while the girl says she shouldn't even call that martial arts. Delivering a powerful punch to the boy, she tells him not to blame her if he ends up getting hurt. While enduring the attack, our hero realizes there's definitely a reaction happening. The mana in his heart is reacting with Rosalind's incomplete fighting spirit. The girl asks if that's all, but the boy tells her to do it once more. Getting irritated, she says she can't believe it, but prepares another strike. Magner wonders what's going on, and that it seems like the boy is trying to do something while the boy asks her to attack again. The patriarch asks Yahello what he's doing, and she explains that it looks like the mana in his heart is reacting to her fighting spirit. Karshia asks what kind of reaction that would be, and she says she's not sure. She can only say that a reaction is happening. Our hero struggles with the pain from his injuries while Rosalind asks if he's okay. Then Larson thinks he's now certain that his transcendent mana is reacting to her fighting spirit, but canonically, he wrote that those two don't mix. He thinks this must mean that probability is decreasing. Then the terminal says he has found a chance to fill in the missing probability. He wonders what he's supposed to do in a world that lacks probability, and that it's not just about surviving. Suddenly, that book he saw before appears once again in front of him, and strangely, he notices that time around him has completely stopped. He thinks it feels like time in this world stops when a configuration is being written. In the book, he sees that the fighting spirit of the martial arts family and the mana of the magic family don't mix with each other, and that on this day the two mix during the duel, and the reason for it appears is a blank space for him to fill. A pen appears out of nowhere in his hand, and he thinks that the preset configuration ends here. He understands he has to continue, but if he's not careful, he could ruin the entire system. He also can't just write and erase things afterward. That could make him the destroyer of the world instead of its creator. He thinks the reason has to be sensitive and not conflict with other configurations, so the reason will be. He decides that the reason is because the character Larson Maiden is not bound by the laws of this world. He thought about writing something else, for example, that it was because he possessed the holy grail of transcendence, or because he has transcendent mana or a celestial body, but he thinks it's better to focus on Larson himself instead of using an external factor, and that if he configures himself as a character who doesn't need to follow the rules of this world, he might not run into preset restrictions again. Basically, this means Larson is an irregular. The terminal displays that he has received the right to add one more line, and it will last for 10 seconds. This makes our hero tense. Elsewhere at night, Rudy is asleep in a corner of the room, leaning against the wall, but she wakes up when someone knocks at her door and she asks who it is. Magner says he's Rosalind's uncle and asks where Larson Maiden is. Annoyed, she asks if he came to bother her, and the man asks if he looks like a bad person to her. Then the girl decides to call for Larson. Magner notices that his body is very well trained, and that a different kind of mana from Fighting Spirit covers his entire body. Most mages focus their mana in their heart, but he's unique, like a mutant. He thinks using mana to train muscles like the martial arts family does would be inconvenient, and that his body was trained with magic combat. The girl says his body has an 8-pack and asks to touch it, but the boy says no. Then he asks Hera to bring him some clothes, and the shadow appears quickly with them in her hands. The old man notices that the maid's movements are on another level, and thinks it's impossible that someone so powerful is just his servant. She says she also prepared some fruit while the two of them sit down. Larson says the reason for his visit must be curiosity about his magic combat techniques, and the man says yes, he made him curious. Then our hero says he's also curious about martial arts, and Magner says, "You." Continuing that the boy seems confident he'll talk about it, and Larson says he's sure Magner is curious enough to tell him. Magner asks if he's thought about the consequences of learning martial arts from him, and he says that's one of the reasons the swordsman invited him. Ironically, his father's eyes cannot reach that far, and not even Decatra can set his eyes on the swordsman's family. The old man wonders if he trained with a maiden, and says to take off his clothes because he will first examine his body. Larson agrees. He thinks his back is both tough and smooth, unbelievable for a 10-year-old, and knows this isn't the result of just a few days of training. Magner says his fighting spirit will pass through the boy's body, tells him not to resist, and though Larson is worried, the man says to trust him. He follows up by asking what else he can do if not trust, so our hero says he will, making Magner think the boy is clever. He realizes the boy created a situation where he had no other choice, yet acts like he's risking his life by placing his trust. He believes the boy is very intelligent. Larson reflects that after his duel with Rosalind, he had a lot to think about. He wonders what the author would give to a main character. He decides the fighting spirit will react with the mana in his body without any side effects, and then the fighting spirit enters his body. Magner wonders if the boy took a part of his fighting spirit, and if that's what the maiden were trying to demonstrate. A mage capable of receiving the fighting spirit, he thinks this is a declaration of war from the maidens. Magner asks who is teaching him magic combat, and the boy replies that he's learning alone. He then says he analyzed the boy's body, and it's the first time he's seen a mage able to receive a fighting spirit. Larson says he didn't know that either. The old man asks if someone from the maiden intends to grow stronger using martial arts, and Larson says he wants to learn everything that can be learned. Magner thinks, learning everything that can be learned, if the maidens consider swordsmanship trivial, and martial arts something for losers. Thus, they look down on anyone who isn't a mage. He wonders if a maiden is truly saying he wants to learn martial arts and become stronger. Then he asks if the boy is sure he's not a half-blood, and our hero says if he's asking about his father's name, it's Decatra Maiden. Laughing, he says he's never seen anyone like him before, so what exactly does he want from him? The boy asks if he can say it. Magner says he was going to do it anyway, so not to waste time and just say it. Smiling, our hero asks the man to please be his mentor. The man reflects on that for a few seconds. Larson thinks he's sure there's a connection between magic combat and martial arts, and that both improve in the presence of a fighting spirit. He realizes that's why something always felt missing in magic combat techniques. The old man asks if he really just said mentor, and the boy confirms, then asks if he thinks the maidens will allow that. Larson says he will make sure they do, and Magner asks who the hell he thinks he is. He replies that he's the 7th son, but the man says he didn't ask that. And that besides, a mage wanting to learn martial arts is the craziest thing he's heard in his life. He asks if the boy has any idea what he just said, and the boy says yes. And as one of the potential successors, it might look like they're bowing to the Grand L. Smiling, Larson says, "But King of Combat, if you were going to reject my offer, you would have done it already." Magner thinks this brat created a situation he can't refuse and even made him curious enough to examine his body. Smiling, knowing he's lost, he realizes that not rejecting the boy's offer right away already meant defeat. Then our hero asks why he didn't refuse, if he's interested in magic combat techniques, and the old man says more specifically in the ones he uses. Larson says they will be more efficient when used with the fighting spirit, and that this will become his own new martial art. The man thinks that this is not something a maiden should be saying if he was born a mage, and says the boy orchestrated everything up until this point. He confirms, saying he noticed the man was paying attention to him. So the old man asks if that duel's purpose was this, and the boy confirms, but he also wanted Rosalind to forgive him for what he'd done. Then he says, King of Combat, asking if he doesn't want to witness the creation of a new martial art. The young boy says he intends for the Sade family to take care of him in that place, and Magner says others will think he's a hostage of the family. But Larson says he's just a damn brat and that it doesn't matter whether he's part of the family or not, and he's sure their father will gain other advantages. Curious, the old man asks if the reason is because that place is the safest, and when the boy confirms, he says he'll be honest with him, and that it's madness. He doesn't know if it's because he was raised by the Maitons, or because he's just strange and thinks the boy is pretty calm, while Larson takes it as a compliment. He believes this was planned a long time ago and wasn't a rushed decision, saying the boy himself will find out if it's something good or bad. Then our hero begins to say if he means that, and Magner interrupts him, saying, exactly. That he can try to be his apprentice, he will analyze everything piece by piece and watch his body and mana like a hawk. That way he'll discover everything the Maitons prepared, and during that time he must absorb everything he can from him. Happy, our hero says that was exactly what he was hoping for. Hampton thinks the master is visualizing something so grand that he himself can't comprehend it, and that Larson let him listen because he completely trusts him, and also the world the young master dreams of. A place where the three families are united, a beautiful world where everyone can be happy, and someone offers a handkerchief as he cries. A bit startled, he thanks his sister, who appeared out of nowhere. Then she tells him not to cry. He says he's still not used to her being another shadow, and that at this rate, he'll die of a heart attack, and she says that if so, he's not qualified. Hampton says she's too cold, and Hera asks if he already knows the master's decision. Then the boy says yes, that he's going to stay here. The girl says that when the ceremony ends, he will go to the main house to receive permission, and that they might have to risk their lives, which makes Hampton tense. But he says yes, that this is the duty of a shadow, and Hera asks even if the patriarch punishes him, and the boy says he'll stand by the master. He adds that it's because young Master Larson is his light, and in the next moment he looks for his sister, who simply vanished. In a flowery place, Ivelia asks if her brother wanted to see her. Larson says yes, and she comments that it seems like he's going to say something important, so the boy says she's quick to notice things. The girl asks why he doesn't say it in a bit, because she feels that these trivial minutes are too precious, adding that it's only to say something important. Larson asks if she likes tulips, and she says people are drawn to beautiful things, so he says he thought magic was the most beautiful thing to her. While she comments that magic holds the most beautiful thing for her, she remembers battle situations where she used her magic, eliminating enemies with her destructive magic, and that it also became the most brutal thing. She adds that at least flowers don't hurt people, and our hero calls out to his sister. Smiling, he says he'll give her a bouquet of flowers one day, and the girl, surprised, asks flowers. She smiles gently and thinks that hearing those words makes her heart flutter. And content, she asks if she should now listen to what her little brother has to say, and he says he wants to stay there with a renowned family of swordsmen. Ivelia asks if he wants to become a patriarch, but he replies no, and she can verify if it's true with her special ability. Then the woman agrees, so no doubt remains, and casts her truth-seeing magic. While she uses her magic, our hero waits. At last, she says he's telling the truth, and asks if that's the case. Why was he so anxious? He replies that he wants to live, and the woman, surprised, asks, "You want to live?" He explains that even his older brother, the Sixth Master, can't wait to kill him, remembering his brother calling him a bastard and saying he'll kill him no matter what. Ivelia says she knows the succession war is brutal, but they wouldn't take their own brother's life. But Larson tells his sister that even their father killed his uncles to obtain the position, and she asks, if that's true, why he wants to stay there. He explains that he wants to become stronger, so Ivelia asks why, and Larson says he wants to live, but she says she thinks there's another reason. Then he says he wants protection, and she asks, what? He completes by saying for himself and for their mother. And that touches her in some way, while the terminal shows that Ivelia loved the Maiden family unconditionally. For the family, she could be cruel, and also for the family, she could be kind. On one occasion, after a fierce battle, a young man attacked her from behind, shouting for the witch to die. With a cold gaze, she restrained him with her magical chains while the boy screamed, thinking that she didn't want to kill him as she wanted to let him live. But still, she used her powerful magic and disintegrated that boy, because she knew that from her family, that was the right thing to do. Ivelia loved everything about the Maiden family, and she hated the succession war. She hated that the beloved siblings fought against each other, and so she would do anything to become the matriarch. She swore to become an absolute ruler, so that she could finally end the war between the siblings. But for that, she would need magic that surpassed everything, a power to achieve peace. She was a mage who longed for only that. Larson believes that in the 10-year ritual, she hunted the evil spirit Balrog, and that it was a much more difficult mission than the ones carried out by the other siblings, hunting monsters instead of humans, and that he wrote all those narratives without thinking too much about them, and for him they were reality. Because it's not hard to write that someone was killed, while at that moment Yahello eliminated the young man while crying for it. It's easy like that because they are just words. Larson turns around and calls for his sister, and if he says he wants to become stronger to protect her, he asks if she would see that as pride. Yahello is quite surprised and asks, "Protect me?" The girl laughs, and our hero thinks it's the most sincere laugh he's ever seen from her, and she says it's the first time she's heard that from someone. Emotionally, she says it's always a great pleasure to talk with her little brother. Larson pleads for her help because he needs to get their father's permission, but she says she doesn't think he will allow it. Our hero then says that he will convince him, and in that beautiful flower field, he says, "I have to convince him." On another day in a very large place, our hero is a bit tense, thinking that this place looks like a palace from the real world. He feels like by the end, he was just writing randomly and wonders how he could add classical music to that pavilion. When suddenly, Rudia calls out to him, telling him to look at this, and Larson wonders where she got that dress from. Drooling, she asks if he sees that the cake has 4 layers, and our hero confirms he does, and she asks if that isn't fascinating. And everyone says happy birthday to young Kason. The boy, happy and shy, thanks everyone for congratulating him. All excited, Rudia says there's her gift, a lucky stone her father gave her. He thanks her politely, and the girl says it's nothing and asks if she can eat the cake, but our hero thinks it looks like a rock he saw on the road. Next, Rosalind says that this is a gift carrying her family's sincerity, and Kason thanks the girl, who notices that he spoke informally and says it was nothing. Our hero says he didn't prepare a gift for him, and Kason says it's okay then. While the two friends watch each other there, Rudia stuffs herself with cake. Instead of a gift, he'd rather stay and train with him, and he knows it's not really a present, and that leaves the boy confused. Then he asks if it's at his house, but Larson says he still needs to get his father's permission, and Kason asks if he's serious, saying it's a really unexpected gift, and our hero agrees with him. Kason says of course, and that it's always good to spend time with friends, so Larson asks him to please inform the patriarch. Harris stays alert as he says he will get the Maiden family's permission. Arriving at the portal, he thinks that yes, he has 2 goals. One is to have Kason by his side, and the other is to make use of Magner as much as he can. Excited, the boy waves and says for his friend to come back soon. Larsa then says yes, and that it won't take long. Meanwhile, Rosalind thinks that this definitely isn't the Larson she used to know, and that next time she hopes. Then Larson interrupts and says that they can greet each other with smiles on their faces. She thinks she wanted to say it first. Yahello asks, "Little brother, do you understand the dangers involved?" and tells him that if their father gets angry, no one in the Maiden family will be able to withstand his fury, but Larson says he's confident. In the main estate of the Maiden family, our hero stands before a grand door. Very tense, he feels as though he can sense the biting cold. As soon as the doors open, the patriarch says there's no need to greet him. He says he received a full report from Yahello and asks if he wants to stay with the Sade family, and if he understands how that might look. Growing irritated, he says that if he doesn't explain himself properly, he'll take it as an insult to the family leader. Larson thinks about the word insult as something starts to materialize in his hand. On his terminal, it shows that it's the instant death dagger and that any mage below 3 circles will die upon contact. Frightened, he realizes the consequence of such an insult is death. Holding that dagger, he says, "Father," and asks if he remembers the dog from the swordsman household, to which he replies yes, and that he was a useful pawn. Continuing, he says that the boy he met, Kason, is extremely weak when it comes to human relationships and emotions. The patriarch questions him, and he says that if he stays with him, he might be able to turn him into his dog, and Decatra asks if that's the only reason he wants to stay there. He explains that to everyone, the techniques of magic combat are weak, but he saw the potential, and the patriarch tells him to continue. He says that he achieved the 2nd circle as his father knows and feels that there is something hidden in his body, so Decatra asks if it's the Holy Grail. Larson thinks that he already knew and says that the mana of the chalice, the unique qualities of his physique, and that his body also responded to the fighting spirit of martial arts. He absorbs some of that spirit, and it's slowly growing inside him. Decatra says he already received an invitation from the Sade, and so the connection has already been established. He says the descendants of the renowned families are interacting with each other for the sake of world peace, and asks if that sounds like a defeat. He continues that the House of Dogs doesn't care about public opinion, and if rumors begin that they bowed their heads to them. Larson finishes by saying he'll take responsibility in his own life. Decatra says he seems confident, and our hero replies that he is, so he asks what he'll do afterward. Very tense, Larson wonders, "Afterward? What do I do afterward?" Kneeling down, he says that first they'll offer their hand to achieve unity, and he's sure his father knows how the rest of the world will see them. And that is the absolute Decatra. Power and absolute strength are the most efficient methods of ruling in the boy's opinion. He adds, "But a warm embrace and a position of humility are what make true rulers." The patriarch says that if he had spoken those words without kneeling, he wouldn't be breathing right now, and our hero is terrified. Decatra says he may leave, and that he'll be watching to see if he can attain such a skill, and Larson says he'll make sure to meet his expectations. Then he says that he's still young, only 10 years old, and annoyed. The patriarch asks if he's complaining, but Larson continues and says that because of that, he still needs the warm embrace of his mother and asks him to please send her with him. Suddenly, the man starts laughing loudly. He smiles and says the boy knows how to manipulate people, while thinking it's incredible that a kid like this was once considered a loser. And it's a shame his talent lies in magical combat techniques, but it's still strange that no one recognized his potential. Something scares our hero, and on the terminal he sees that the celestial mage is suspecting a probability destruction, and it's been partially destroyed. In shock, he thinks the probability has been destroyed, and if the world is destroyed too, he will be obliterated. Yahello is in her room, calmly reading a book. The girl reads attentively, whatever it may be. Someone interrupts her with a knock on the door, and the woman thinks her sister would make this unexpected visit at some point. With a slight mocking tone, Persia questions why the blonde is reading about basic magic, and the young woman replies that it's nothing important. That book was about mana cultivation techniques that are easy to learn, and our hero had read it previously too. Yahello says she needs to say something. Persia says she also wants to tell her something, and Yahello says she'll be straightforward. Yahello says that from that moment on, Larson is under her care, while seeming to activate some kind of power in her eyes. Persia laughs and says she came to say the same thing. The woman finds it strange that their father gave the other a chance and wonders who will claim that variable for herself. Angrily, Yahello says the situation is none of her sister's business, as the youngest brother had already been hers by right long before all of this. Smiling, Persia states that she'll have to act according to the laws of mana if the girl doesn't cooperate with her, and adds that if she tries, she will fail. The redhead dives into a memory of how the blonde had many chances to seriously harm her, like once in the canyons of Nupia. If it were the other way around, she would have left her crippled, but surprisingly, she didn't do it. Radiating an intense power, the woman says her sister is completely mistaken. Also glowing with great power, the other replies, "Am I really?" A massive flash bursts from the room at that moment. Clearly hurt, someone complains about the pain. Fallen to the ground, Persia asks if the girl realized it now. Suddenly, a foot appears on the redhead's shoulder. The redhead asks why her sister is interested in the youngest, and Yahello replies that she doesn't want to and won't tell her anything about it. Defiant, the woman says the blonde's reaction only makes her want the boy even more. With a very threatening look, the girl questions why the other wants him. Persia smiles and replies it's because Larson is very cute. Yahello presses her foot down harder while scolding her sister to stop with the unpleasant jokes. The redhead heard that the boy reached the second circle even at such a young age and asked the other if she really thought she wouldn't find out. She also says she hired a shadow to follow him and that the person suddenly vanished. Besides Yahello's sudden obsession with the boy, Persia purposely came to see how the woman would react by showing up there. The blonde regains her calm, telling the girl to get up because the elders will arrive soon due to the mana, and the girl bursts into laughter. Reflecting on what just happened, the redhead thinks, that reaction of hers, now I really want to get my hands on him. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Larson is startled by something. Soso asks if something happened, but the boy replies it was nothing. The food is served, spaghetti and meatballs. The boy notes that having Hera around means his chances of dying drop significantly, and he's relieved because of that. He thanks the maid for the meal. Smiling, the maid says he needs to eat well during his growth phase. He finds it strange that she's being more kind than usual and activates his visual power to try to find out something. With this power, he analyzes his plate, showing that it contains traces of seiken, which raises his suspicion. A terminal informs that seiken is a deadly poison for those without mana and not lethal for those who have it. It's used to build poison resistance. Larsa then asks the maid if there's something special in it, and she says there isn't anything. Suddenly, what seems to be a memory appears, showing a person on the floor with food scraps around them. And next to the person, Hera is there eating one of the pieces, remembering that she's eaten seiken since she was 3. The boy agrees that there might be nothing wrong with it, but maybe some kind of poison, and someone nearby reacts in horror. Desperate, Hampton says he forgot to mention that, admitting it was a total oversight on his part. Larson tells him to get up and explain everything, and that explanation takes some time until the young master finally understands it. Hera, curious, tries to understand how the boy noticed it, and he replies that it was his intuition. The girl congratulates him as she adjusts her glasses, saying he has great observation and analytical skills. He probably smelled the seiken. She adds that it was very smart of him to say it was intuition, and he wonders where she even got those glasses from. The maid realizes the boy is exceeding her expectations and says she will keep doing her best as his shadow to make him stronger. Now the two servants look at Soso and are about to say something. Hera says that Lady Soso's dish was prepared by her based on her preferences and there's no need to worry. Happy, the woman thanks the maid. The goblet tells the boy to relax because the Grail is here, but our hero says it's poison, and the little cup says this poison is nothing. Larson says it says that, but it seems completely drunk, and the goblet, a bit loopy, tells him to pay attention to his timing between a few hiccups. Suddenly, Rudia appears at the door with an urgent expression, calling the boy by surprise. She asks when they're leaving, and Larson replies that it's at 8 in the morning. Then she asks if they can go now, because she wants to eat cake. Then he explains that they won't be able to use the teleportation gates if they go now, and Rudia is surprised by that. Lying down on the bed, she says they should sleep quickly then, because if they sleep, tomorrow will come faster. And out of nowhere, the girl seems to have already fallen into a deep sleep, while our hero asks if Hera is listening. Suddenly, the shadow appears in the room saying yes, no master, and startled, he wonders how long she's been there. Then he asks her to take the girl to her room without waking her up, and a woman calmly says she understands. Out of nowhere, Rudia starts floating above the bed, leaving Larson quite surprised by the situation. And in the next moment, the two simply vanish, while he thinks that's just like Hera. Always impressive. Some time passes in that mansion, and on the next day, Hampton says he's sorry they have to go by a simple carriage, but Soso says it's fine. In this era, mana-powered vehicles are exclusive to aristocrats and are extremely luxurious items, and asking for such a fancy vehicle to transport his mother would just make the other mothers jealous. Rudia seems happy interacting with the horse, and our hero thinks there's no need to make anyone jealous right now. Climbing onto the cart as if it were a ritual, he wonders if this should be his first step toward independence. He thinks about heading to the renowned family of swordsmen, who will help him realize his plans. Meanwhile, that cart moves forward with its group, and finally they arrive at the city once more. Hera, already outside, announces that they have arrived at the Sades, while our hero is the first to get down. Suddenly someone calls out Larson's name, and he looks over. Kaysen, looking excited, says he knew he'd be back soon, and our hero, not too thrilled with the situation, says he's here. So hey friend, he needs to keep his promise. Then Kaysen says they're going to duel. Larson thinks things are going just as expected while he unbuttons his cape, and throwing it behind him, he tells his friend that it won't be so easy this time while thinking he's going to show his full power now. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.